I present to you the greatest revenge of all time. Our story today begins with our desperate protagonist fleeing through the forest. And even as he falls from the top of the mountain, he cannot escape his pursuers. One of them calls our protagonist Prince Cheon Yeo Woon and congratulates him, as he had been running for over an hour and they only just now managed to capture the lad. The boy tries to argue, saying he did everything they asked, even gave up the academy, so why do they still threaten his life? They say that even though he is a commoner, he still has the slightest claim to the throne. As long as he's alive he'll have rights, and they can't let him live. The leader of the ninjas says that if the protagonist surrenders, he'll have a painless death, but the boy refuses, saying he'd rather fight to the end. I like this guy's spirit. The ninjas move to finish their mission of eliminating the protagonist, who tries to resist and fight in some way, but he can't. Caught by the neck, the ninja still jokes, asking if that's all he's got. At that moment, the secret blade shocks them all. How could this untrained commoner, without skills, manage to hold a sword and resist like this? They soon realize that if he had training like the others, he would be a great threat to the royal family, so they say he must die tonight regardless. The protagonist didn't even see the knee that probably broke all his teeth. No, it's all here! A ninja makes a fatal wound on the boy. The scream was so loud it woke up the entire forest. For eliminating one of their own, he steps on the wound before finishing the job. As they were about to deliver the final blow, a bright light shines and whoever was about to strike is disintegrated. From 3 different angles, they realize who must be responsible and point to a stylish, futuristic teenager. At the sign of another attack, the bright light dazzles again, and they're all disintegrated in the blink of an eye. The last ninja knows that such ability is not normal, so he flees, leaving his mission behind. But with just a raise of the hand, he's eliminated while still in the air. Accepting that his life was already over, he at least feels happy to see that they got what they deserved, closing his eyes and waiting for death to come. The futuristic teenager, not at all sad, says he's out of time and asks his ancestor to make his life good in the future. After the mysterious injection, he hears a robotic voice in his head and the protagonist faints. The mysterious youth disappears forever. Long ago, waking up the next day with dark spots all over his body, he realizes his body is covered in dark spots. He hears a voice in his head asking if the master has finally awakened. The protagonist, not understanding, asks who's speaking in his head and how is that possible. The voice says it's a nano machine. He understood nano machine instead of machine, and machine means evil god in Chinese. Now Cheon Yun thinks he's possessed by an evil god. Meanwhile, 2 elders of the demon cult walk while discussing the assassination attempt on Prince Cheon Yun. The person who found the protagonist describes the scene as a battlefield, with many disturbing things around, and there was the prince sleeping peacefully amidst that terrible scene without any injuries. They go to the room to visit the boy, who was still talking to the evil nano machine. Prince Cheon asks if it was the nano machine that saved him yesterday. She says it depends. If it's about eliminating the ninjas, then no, it wasn't her, as she was still in the syringe. But if it's about activating the healing process, then yes. Nano machines are a thing of the future. Explaining this to a person from the past millennium wouldn't be possible. So, the nano machine asks if she can send the information directly from his brain. What's a brain? Never mind, yes, you can. Now, Cheon Yun understands what a nano machine is. Meanwhile, the 2 people arrive at his room. He pretends to be asleep to avoid talking to them. Let's come back later. Now, kid, you stink. There's no way to avoid it with that smell. The doctor approaches and recognizes the boy. Cheon confirms that yes, the doctor treated his mother. Feeling his pulse, he finds something very strange. What is it, doctor? Is he going to die? Quite the opposite. His body is in great shape. He's perfect for a martial artist. These dark spots on his body are toxins being expelled. Did he take some kind of super secret special medicine? Thinking about it, the protagonist wonders if the evil god in his head is real. The demon cult was formed by several families, but only 6 core sects. Every 10 years, the demon cult's academy opens to train the best warriors of the generation. When princes join the academy, it's called the period of great battles of the heirs. The doctor doesn't find answers, so he just prescribes some tonics for further recovery. When he leaves, he wonders how someone can improve so much overnight. When the prince was young, he thought he would die due to his fragility and lack of knowledge. But now he can learn to fight and stand among the best princes and even compete against them. Cheon Yun is alive today only because his guard, Jang, protected him. Now he orders him to go take a bath, clean up, and change clothes. In the bath, he decides to test his healing ability. Using a blade, he cuts himself deeply. Before his eyes, he learns that his body can regenerate very quickly. He didn't believe the voice in his head, but now he sees that it's true. Moreover, the nano machine has made his body incredibly powerful. Later in the library, another thing he can do now is super fast reading. He can flip through a book in 10 seconds and absorb all the content. I imagine myself at my school with this. I would be amazing. Now that the rejected prince has discovered his new infinite potential, he can now get revenge on all those who treated him badly. The first one to suffer at his hands will be the prince who sent the ninjas after him. This same boy received information that his family's ninjas failed to carry out his order to eliminate the bastard prince, tarnishing the name of the demon demon cult. He says he'll deal with that bastard at the academy. The next day, the protagonist was thinking that today is the day he'll join the academy. It would be good if he had already learned some combat skills before going to the academy. He watches guard Young train, then the nano machine asks if he wants an analysis of the guard's movements. He stays there for almost an hour watching the movements while analyzing. After that, the nano informs that she has finished analyzing the guard's movements. It's installed directly in his brain, and he tests it to see, and it already works 100%. No, actually, not quite. At least one thing doesn't work. He has the knowledge in his head, but the muscles aren't used to the movements of this martial art. So he has to train the muscles first, but she says he can also make changes to his body. He won't even need to train to use the technique, only it will hurt. He accepts, and it doesn't hurt that much, but when it really happens, he faints. When the prince's protector remembers that he's alone, hours in a place where there are people who want to kill him, he rushes to see how the boy is. Arriving there, all he finds is the prince passed out in bed. He also sees that the son of a bitch destroyed the room's floor. Astutely, he also realizes that these footprints are from his training movements, and that the prince is watching his training secretly, and training secretly too. It's true, guys, a lot of training indeed. Nano training. When he wakes up later with all DLCs installed, his knowledge and body are now ready for fighting techniques. He tries to use the technique again and breaks the floor once more. The next moment, the guard arrives with the boy's breakfast, who hides the broken floor with the table. He thinks the guard didn't notice. The protagonist remembers that this will be his last day with the guard, as he's going to the academy. It's been almost 5 years since his mother died, and the guard has been taking care of him since then. Then the guard removes the table and asks since when he learned his dagger technique. Prince Cheon is surprised, as in their culture taking others' techniques is forbidden, and that's what he did with the nano machine, so it's unforgivable. But instead of getting upset and judging the boy, the guard is happy. He hands over the technique manual and tells the protagonist that he only didn't teach him because traditions don't allow it. But since he learned it on his own, he did well, and he cries. Even though the boy promised in the past that he wouldn't cry anymore since his mother's death, the guard says it's okay. He can cry now in front of him, as long as he stays strong to go to the academy. Gentlemen, this guy is amazing! So, finally, the protagonist goes for the first day at the academy. The warrior who will make the speech for the new students tells everyone that this place may be the last they'll see in life, so be careful. He doesn't seem to believe in the potential of the students there, but when he looks to the front, where the 6 heirs of the demon sect are, he changes his mind and presents to us the names of the mortal rivals of our rejected prince.
Number 1, Cheon Yeo from the Shadow sect. Number 2, Cheon Yeo Woon from the Sword sect. Number 3, Cheon Moo Kyung from the Spring sect. Number 4, Cheon Jang Sum from the Poison sect. Number 5, Cheon Yu Chan from the Blade sect. Number 6, Cheon Wonryo from the Sound sect.
The red-haired man says that this time there's only one female candidate. What a shame. Moreover, the 7th heir isn't here. When he goes to get his ticket, the entry for the 7th son isn't on the list, so he doesn't receive the entry to go to the venue. Therefore, he has to stay at the back like everyone else who isn't important. Meanwhile, the gossip speaking ill of the prince is spreading. That's great. When he starts humiliating everyone, I want to see the look on their faces. Finally, the main event, the arrival of the Lord and his guardians to welcome the students. And for some reason, one of the Lord's guardians likes to drink a lot. So, the leader of the guardians orders them to be silent because, Your Majesty, is going to speak. This is the leader of the demonic cult, one of the top 5 strongest in all of Murin, the incredible Lord Jeon Jang. When he speaks, everyone trembles in fear at his overwhelming presence. The Lord welcomes everyone, saying that everyone there is the future and pride of the cult. So, train hard, make friends, and be great soldiers for me in the future. That's all. Before leaving, he takes a look at the 7th prince, turns his back, and leaves. He's the boy's father, but still, the protagonist is a son of his castle servant, not from any of the main clans. So, Cheon Yun himself says he didn't expect anything from him. The formalities are over. The academy director begins to explain how the 4 years of the students at the academy will be. Each of them will only have one chance to pass each stage. Whoever fails some of the tests is expelled from the academy. One of the princes raises his hand, saying he has a question. The director rejects it and asks if questions were authorized. The director explains that when you enter the academy, you lose all your privileges from the 6 families here. So, if he doesn't want to be expelled on the first day, he should shut up. The princes humiliate the protagonist, but in the eyes of the academy, everyone is equal. I already like this guy too. He says the kid's question must be obvious, that one chance to pass each stage is very unfair. However, he says there are benefits you gain when you pass each stage. A black dragon sphere, the richest library in the kingdom. Each stage they pass, they'll gain access to a new floor in it. This way, they can strengthen themselves at each stage. Now, everyone is excited. The rewards are great. But the person who just boosted the boys' morale throws and at the vast majority won't even make it halfway through the stages. So, to worsen everyone's morale, when you enter the academy, you lose all your privileges. And when you leave, your ranking in society will depend on the level you reached in the academy. So, whoever Whoever fails the first test can look for a job as a farmer. The first test is to sift out those who don't have potential. Anyone with little or no Nigong is screwed. Cheon Yun is in trouble. The prince made a deal in the past that he would never learn Nigong, so they wouldn't secretly kill him. Cheon Yun never learned, but still, the scoundrel here ordered him to be eliminated. The Sound clan will do the first test now, and only those who have at least some training will be able to stand for the necessary time. The test begins, and upon hearing this music, it's very intense. The weakest students started to fall. The 6 princes trained from birth with all possible resources don't even feel difficulty. But then the woman starts playing louder. For some reason, she's getting angry, and the princes begin to notice that it's becoming difficult even for them to endure. People deep down are bleeding from their ears, but the woman doesn't stop, and it gets more intense. The woman's intention is to bring down the 7th prince, whom she hates, without caring about the rest of the students falling. One of the princes wonders why this woman is playing even louder and louder. Then he looks back to see what it is. Then he realizes our beloved protagonist showing no signs of fatigue. How is this possible? He doesn't even know Nigong, or does he? Everyone starts feeling the pressure from the bad music. The old woman holds a grudge against the protagonist, and will do anything for him to fail this test, so she keeps increasing the music. She crosses the line. Even the princes would fail if the director didn't intervene. He ends the exam. The nano machine that has total control over Cheon Yun's body blocks his hearing, but realizing that almost everyone nearly died here, and he, who has no kind of training, doesn't seem to have been affected by the test, would be very strange. When the test ends, he orders the nano machine to inflict internal injuries on him. As a result, he vomits a little blood to make a scene. Proud of this kid, he already passed the test, deceiving everyone with intelligence. Besides, he gained the respect of the redhead when he sees that the boy doesn't have a drop of Nigong. The kid passed the test only with the strength of determination. He sends the boy to the infirmary and goes to exchange some words with the Elder of Sound. He says she went too far and failed almost everyone, besides almost killing one of the sovereign's sons. She admits she was wrong and went overboard. Then the redhead says the boy doesn't have a drop of Nigong. She says she doesn't believe it because it doesn't make sense. The director insists he checked himself. The kid endured everything in determination. The 2 guardians who don't seem to like each other face off a little, and then the redhead asks him to leave. He says he will, but it's not because he ordered, it's because the drink ran out. The princes feel something coming their way. They don't know if it's their power or the strong scent of alcohol. The drunk guardian leaves thinking the boy is amazing, endured everything without any energy, while these excited kids are hopeless. The redhead admits that he also liked the boy and that if he weren't of royal lineage, he would take him as a disciple because the kid has potential. The other princes also got hurt by the test, but no one seems to have cared about them. In the infirmary, the doctor, upon hearing that there's a patient coming, gets excited to be able to work. He asks what happened. How many stabs did he take to be bleeding like this? The guards say it's not that. They're internal injuries because he resisted the attack from the sound lady for a long time without having any Nigong. The guards leave now, but one of them takes a look at the protagonist before and says that this kid isn't as bad as minutes ago. The nano machines healed him from the inside, so he's just pretending to be injured. A drunk guard breaks the door, entering the place, leaving the doctor annoyed. But because of the hierarchy, he can't complain much. Meanwhile, the boy pretends to be injured and sleeping, but the guardian approaches and says hi. He asks until when he's going to keep pretending to be asleep. He keeps pretending to be asleep, so the guy uses magic, lifts him and says that if he doesn't stop now, he'll get slapped on the ear. Finally, the prince gives up and asks how he knew it was pretending. The drunk guy finds it funny and says it was because of the speed of his breathing. Someone who's unconscious doesn't breathe like that. The guardian says that kids nowadays are all spoiled and take the easiest path, full of whims. He says he liked the protagonist, that he has determination the other students don't have. He releases the ability he made for him to sit down. The guardian says he wants the boy as a disciple. Surprised, Cheon can't believe that one of the most powerful guys in the kingdom wants to be his master, so suspiciously, he asks if the drunk knows who he is. He says yes, he's the useless bastard son of the Lord. He disagrees with the last part, but it doesn't matter. If he does this, the other 6 noble families will be against him. The guardian says he's not in favor of him anyway, so it doesn't matter. But what will you teach me? How to drink? The man knows he grew up as the bastard son everyone wants to get rid of, so he's already suspicious of something so convenient. The boy thinks it's better not to. This is an academy. He won't lack teachers here. But then the drunk explains that things won't be easy for him here. For example, everyone who got hurt after the last exam ended wasn't sent to the infirmary, only the boy. That's because everyone else used Nigong to heal themselves. The prince who doesn't know how to do that is the only one here. In other words, if the prince doesn't learn Nigong, he won't stand a chance here. The only way he'll learn that is with 2 hours a day on the first floor of the library. Faced with all these arguments, the only thing the prince thinks about is how much he'll be able to enter that library and use the hack machine to speed run reading. But he he realizes that even with the nano machine, he's at a huge disadvantage, so he accepts, yes, to be the drunk's disciple and bows before his master. Look how cool. The master says that the blood Cheon should not bow before anyone and lifts the boy using Nigong. In other words, the royal blood is the Cheon blood, so the drunk master recognizes him as a true prince. Guys, I'm going to cry. Now I won't call him drunk anymore. The right guardian pats the doctor and tells him to take care of his student well. The doctor congratulates the prince. The guy who never takes students today made a point of having the boy as his disciple. And behind the scenes, because it's forbidden to have masters from outside the academy here, but he won't tell, the doctor is a good guy. Meanwhile, on the training field, the class is cultivating. Someone tells the left guardian that a total of 415 students passed the first test. The guardian says it was 200 fewer people than in the last test 10 years ago, and that's because this year's test was very difficult. The students who didn't pass are revolted at the academy. He tells those who didn't pass and found the test very difficult that the test was difficult because of the 7th Prince Cheon. But regardless of that, accept their fate, then forcibly expels all of them from the academy. The guardian also says that this year the competition will be stronger since the level is higher due to the difficulty of the first test. Among the talents, the number 1 prince of the Dark Clan and the number 5 prince of the Sword Clan are the great talents of this generation. It is very likely that one of these two will be the successor to the great leader. The guardian says that from today on, groups will be formed, and the next tests will be in groups, so either everyone in the group fails or everyone passes. From today on, everyone will be trained by the tactics and techniques team. Take advantage and look at the faces of these teachers, who are all very friendly. After class, the prince who tried to kill Cheon Yun before tells the instructor that one person from his team is in the infirmary and hasn't received the news. He doesn't want his team to fail because of one guy, so he wants to give him the news to keep him informed. The instructor congratulates the prince and says he understands the meaning of the next group work test and says he will go there himself to give information to this student in the infirmary. The instructor warns that only those who are injured can go to the infirmary. Smirking maliciously, the boy says it's okay. The protagonist will undergo acupuncture treatment for 14 days. That's all to disguise. He can't heal overnight to avoid arousing suspicion because everyone knows he can't use Nigong. The instructor from Prince Cheon Yun's team went to the infirmary to talk to the boy, but his doctor didn't allow it and warned that for 14 days, he won't leave here. The next test is in 3 weeks. Until then, he will have to learn everything he needs on his own in the infirmary with his secret teacher. In the dead of night, the legendary Yasuo sneaks into the prince's room to instill Nigong within him, believing it will make him stronger. The master arrives, stating that tonight, Prince Cheon will learn what he should already know. Injecting his own energy, he clears the path for the prince's own flow to run freely. For someone who's never trained, the prince has the perfect physique, like a god of war. Could this be the influence of the Lord on the child? It wouldn't be surprising, as the only woman the Lord truly cared for was this boy's mother. That same night, fights erupted in all the dormitories to decide the leaders. A cadet beat the prince of the Poison Clan and all the other students. His name is Baek Ji-ai, the new leader of Group 18. Back in the infirmary, after hours, the guardian finished unlocking the prince's Nigong veins. It was extremely exhausting and likely painful, but the prince insists he's fine, not feeling a thing. The guardian tells him he has 1 more week to learn to use his Nigong before leaving. Seeing how tired he is, Prince Cheon recognizes his effort and becomes even more determined. Pleased with the prince, the guardian advises him to always remember breathing and flow before departing. With these words, the prince thanks his mentor, determined to master it in a week. This marks the beginning of his journey for revenge. The next day, at the training center, the guardian divided the class into groups, assigning each prince to a different group. That night, the groups would decide their leaders. As expected, each prince became the leader of their group, showcasing their power and superiority. However, one prince didn't become a leader. His face bruised. He stood in front of his group's leader. Another prince taunts him for failing to become a leader, especially the prince our protagonist hates the most. The prince of the Poison Clan grows angry, vowing revenge later. I want to see how far this goes. I'm enjoying it. After class, the prince asks the teacher how many days until his teammate leaves the infirmary. The answer, 1 more week. Frustrated he can't attack his nemesis yet, in the dorm, he takes out his anger on everyone. One of his allies suggests that if Prince Cheon Yun won't leave the infirmary, where the injured go, they can send someone there. The doctor in the infirmary, with only Cheon Yun as a patient, suddenly receives a new patient with a sword lodged in his back. After stitching him up, he'll have to stay in the infirmary for 3 days alongside Cheon Yun. Now I get the plan. Sent during the night to injure Cheon Yun, the plan seemed right, but trying to sever his ligaments triggered the nano machine's defense system. A surge of electricity ran through him, causing him to pass out. This noise wakes our protagonist, and seeing what just happened fills him with rage. Later, the attacker wakes up tired, confused about how he was knocked out. The calm prince tells him the sleeping beauty has finally awakened. The boy panics when Cheon Yun shows him his now shaved head, the pride of a warrior. Cheon Yun hits him to calm him down. He has more important things to do. He asserts his dominance, demanding to know who sent him. When the boy refuses to cooperate, Cheon Yun threatens to cut him if he doesn't spill everything. Finally removing his gag, the attacker claims students can harm each other outside the combat field, so he can't do anything to him. Cheon Yun promises to do something that won't leave marks for the teachers or anyone to notice. Just seeing those needles got me scared, guys. He covers his mouth again and puts it on his fingers. Only after fainting twice and having his whole hand operated on does he decide it's time to talk. However, the prince already removes his gag and says he already knows it's Prince Mujiam. How do you know? Cheon Yun says the instructor comes here every day, so he asks about what's going on outside, knows which group he's in, the Spring Clan Prince's interest in him, and his leadership of the group. At that moment, Cadet 23 called Hyobang remembers they said this guy is dead weight, but that's not what he found out today. He swears he won't tell anyone what happened today, so don't hurt him anymore. However, Cheon Yun says he needs to sleep and delivers a Nigong blow that knocks him out. As his consciousness fades, the bald guy realizes this guy does have Nigong. Yes, he's deceiving everyone. That's our protagonist, ruthless, powerful, and thirsty to surpass everyone. I'm really enjoying this story. Please leave a like on the video to show me if you guys like this guy too. The master who visits his student every night with all the excitement in the world because he's a monster, and he'll have merit in it. Arriving there, he'll take Cheon Yun's reward, the Black Dragon Sphere. At that moment, he discovers there's a body in the infirmary with him. The protagonist calmly says that's a cadet who came to the infirmary with an intentional injury to try to kill him. Unconcerned, he says he already knows who ordered it, one of the princes, and it's fine, he's used to it. The master is sad. A child shouldn't be used to this. He says he'll need friends from now on. That'll be important. But enough of that. It's time to install another hack. With this sphere he brought, the protagonist will progress more than 20 years in Nigong training. If he knows how to take advantage, they start the assimilation, and every day he's more of a monster. Soon Sung Jin won't stand a chance. Kid, what happened to your hair? Don't say anything else. I'll leave you alone. The extra was sent to eliminate the protagonist from being a competitor to the throne, and the only thing eliminated was his hair. After the bald guy left the infirmary and told the master he failed in the mission, a bad person like him humiliates the bald guy who failed. The bald guy covers his head and says that the one who tried to kill the protagonist woke up. After that, the doctor didn't leave the room. He didn't have a chance to try anything. The doctor didn't even sleep again in those 2 days he stayed there. The prince is annoyed that the doctor is so perceptive and protects the boy. Even though it seems like Cadet 23 wasn't at fault, his leader beats him and calls him an incompetent piece of trash. Finally calming down and saying he'll handle it on his own when he gets out of there. While still hitting the bald guy, Hyobang remembers how kind he was when he asked for this favor, but now he treats him like this. So he decided not to tell about the protagonist's true abilities. When the time comes, he'll find out on his own. Cheon Yeo Woon kept training in Xiao Meng's martial arts, the right guardian of the cult. This time, Cheon trained a new technique, and his movements were much better than before. Meng watched the training very closely and was amazed by Cheon Yeo Woon's genius. In just a few days, Meng showed the shadow butterfly step a few times, but now Cheon can confidently demonstrate these movements himself. The protagonist decided to show only the basic movements he learned by watching his master, fearing to raise suspicions if Cheon Yeo could perfectly mimic just by looking. Meng thinks that if he had more time, he could teach all the movements of the technique. Throughout the week, he managed to master the basic movements. He praised his student and said that Cheon had mastered them well. Meng gave him a piece of paper containing information about the butterfly technique so he could study it on his own. Morning was the last day of classes with Professor Meng. Cheon Yeo thanked the professor again. Satisfied, Meng pulled out his blade and showed it to his student. Cheon's surprised face reflected in the sword. Meng then threw his sword so he could feel its weight, which is 3 times lighter than a regular sword. It's a treasure of his clan. He demonstrated its cutting power, slicing through a solid piece of wood effortlessly. As the boy would leave the infirmary tomorrow and showed him the complete movements, Cheon Yeo paid close attention as his master began, asking the nanopad to start analyzing. In the morning, his master Meng left the infirmary. 2 people were mysteriously watching from afar, the left guardian and the central guardian. The red-haired director of the academy questioned why the central guardian had always been protecting this boy. His answer was simple: it's fair. He left the redhead alone, who then wondered if 10 days of training would make things fair. That morning, when the doctor went to the infirmary, he noticed something different. Cheon Yeo Woon was always awake in the morning, but this time he was sleeping. He decided to do the same and sleep, but Cheon Yeo Woon wasn't sleeping as he should. The doctor woke up startled by a noise. His only patient began vomiting. Worried, he made him lie down again and checked his pulse. It left him in doubt. The pulse of someone who is asleep shouldn't be so rapid. What's stranger is he suddenly calmed down. The doctor began to doubt his medical knowledge and went back to sleep. After a few hours, Cheon Yeo Woon woke up. 8 hours of sleep were needed for the nanopad to act. His body was now adapted to the new technique he had just learned. His master showed the technique to his family so he could train. Yesterday was the last day he could train him. From now on, he must evolve on his own. Meng asked him to be careful and to strive to do well. This made Cheon Yeo Woon happy. It's the first time someone else has cared for him. Testing his new condition, his master has no idea his technique technique has already been 100% learned. His body is now fully capable. While testing his body, Cheon Yeo Woon realized his senses are sharper. He could sense the doctor coming from the other side of the wall. Dr. Baek Jongmin came to bring the cadet uniform. Now he's number 7, representing being the 7th prince. The doctor also wishes him luck from now on, and says he'll be sad to have no more patients to care for. With malice, young Cheon Yeo says that soon he will have many patients to treat, then thanks the doctor for his care and leaves. At the infirmary door, he stops for a moment and says that the doctor was also great to him, keeping his training secret and taking good care of him. Cheon Yeo Woon will never forget that. Later, when went to the academy training, everyone was surprised to see the student who never came before. Prince Museum was eager to destroy the brother he hated so much. An instructor asks if he's well enough to participate in the classes. He says yes, he's fully recovered. When asked if he knows how this class works in theory, he says yes. Then, he must grab that sword and shield and take his position. Passing by his brother, Prince Museum asks if he was afraid to hide in the infirmary. However, Museum is totally ignored. Being ignored by someone as arrogant as him hurts his hatred deeply. Meanwhile, Cheon Yeo just observes what's happening. Soon, he will show his place. The professor announces that training will begin now, and if there's any accident again, the person will be expelled. Each team leader must lead their group in a battle simulation. The professor placed Prince Cheon Yeo in an easier position, expecting him not to keep up with the others. But in fact, he's doing better than expected. For 15 minutes, the simulations continued. The instructor was surprised how other students were already at their limit, yet Cheon Yeo, who had been in the infirmary for 14 days, was doing fine. Then, he decides to change his place. Prince Museum continues giving orders to his group as they advance. In a new position, his brother Cheon Yeo doesn't make any mistakes, which irritated Museum. Therefore, he ordered one of his servants to obey him and do what he commands now. When the time comes and they're in formation, he should attack Cheon Yeo, take him out of formation. When it was the perfect time, he put his foot on his back to kick him. However, the protagonist had noticed and mocked him. When he tried to kick with all his force, the Nano machine's defense system activated, and he was thrown back several meters, dragging himself. He didn't understand what happened here. Could it be that Cheon Yeo's Nigong is stronger than mine? The troublesome student lying on the ground, the professor approaches and says, "Him again? The same boy who last time injured his fellow with a sword. He had to go to the infirmary." The irritated student looked at the protagonist and saw him smiling. This made him grind his teeth in anger. The professor standing in front of him asked if that expression was for him. Because of this insolence, he struck his student in the chest and said that from today, Cadet 23 for the next 4 days will have no day off. And if he has any questions, can he speak now?
Why you bully me?
At this moment, Prince Museum and his group became a joke. The arrogant student defended by the prince was now humiliated. Prince Museum was filled with hatred for this. Watching everyone in training, the academy director wonders if Cheon Yeo already has a higher Nigong level than that boy then. It was said that he was untalented, so maybe it's true that being the Lord's son, even if he hasn't had training, talent runs in his veins. All the prince can do now is to send disapproving looks to his brother, as he can't attack him. Later, in the weapons hall, the students are allowed to have lunch. Everyone will eat chicken and other meats. The protagonist is happy because everything tastes so good. However, his brother's hateful or irritating look bothers him. Can't he even enjoy his meal and stop it? This makes him think, why does he hate so much if they've never even seen each other? The protagonist just thinks they don't know what suffering is. None of them saw their own mother die helpless, so he can't wait to destroy them all. Later, after everyone ate, the cadets were dismissed, except for Cadet 80. He's under punishment. Content: Cheon Yeo observes that things are improving. Now, all students are heading to the library. There, his brother awaited him leaning against a pillar. And as always, he's with stronger people by his side. He's a coward. This commotion catches the attention of other people, including the princess. His sister watches from afar. The prince, now that he has an audience, begins his show. He goes up to Prince Cheon Yeo Woon and calls him a dirty blood. He says that until now, it has been easy since he was lying in the infirmary. So he asks if someone of dirty blood like him is annoyed. Cheon Yeo Woon questions if he's insulting the Lord, because calling someone who has his blood dirty is the same as saying that the Lord's blood is dirty. The protagonist ironically asks if he's so powerful that he can even insult the Lord of the cult. The situation turns against the prince of the Spring clan. His sister then says he's really dumb to do that. Farther away, the prince of the Sword clan says his brother is an idiot. Feeling humiliated, Museum grabs him by the shirt and attacks the protagonist. However, in the blink of an eye, a punch hits his face and he falls. Cheon Yeo Woon then asks if he feels annoyed. The prince, who has never been disrespected or hurt, screams in frustration, "You worm! How dare you do this to me?" The prince then attacks his brother. Museum hits the void. Cheon Yeo Woon easily dodges, and after getting some distance, he flees the scene. This ability to move surprises his brothers. He shouldn't be able to move like that. The prince screams for his allies to pursue. As he holds his nose, he says he can't let him live, can't even consider him human. As they chase the protagonist, they find it odd. He seems to be running just enough so they can't get close to him. After a while, the prince also catches up to his men, shouting why they haven't caught him yet. Confidently, he says he will crush every bone of Cheon Yeo Woon. After a few minutes of running, the protagonist finally stops. He asks if they're tired of running. As he prepares his attack, he shouts there's no reason to show off. The prince blocks his blow and is thrown back. He says he defended the blow using Nigong and still got pushed back. His Nigong is strong, the angry prince says. So you know martial arts. Museum thinks it's strange. In the first test, he didn't have any Nigong at all. So what happened for him to get so strong? Cheon Yeo continues attacking his brother. When the others manage to arrive, they see the fight, which is intense. The prince also manages to retaliate and hits him in the stomach. The protagonist says he'll take a few hits and defends against others. Despite everything, his opponent is still strong, but he can still endure this battle. Quickly, he goes after the prince and almost hits him in the head. The prince then dodges and hits him directly in the face. Now confident, the prince says he's trash, doesn't even know how to retaliate. The protagonist on the ground just watches with a concerned look. The prince, mocking him, says imitating others' techniques is beyond his limit. Truly, the protagonist admits he underestimated him, recognizes that the prince has more combat experience. However, Cheon Yeo Woon closely observes his enemy when the prince attacks using one of his techniques. Using the nano machine to analyze his movements and identify the weak point, at the right moment, he dodges and hits his opponent directly with an uppercut to the chin. The attack was so strong it could have even broken his teeth. This surprised Cheon Yeo Woon. The prince takes some distance, holding his teeth in his mouth. The protagonist now realizes he can use the nano machine to analyze movements. The move he just used is from boxing, something the nano machine has in its database. Angry, he now attacks, throwing several punches at once. Cheon Yeo Woon easily dodges. His enemy's movements are easy to predict. This frustrates the prince. He lands several blows on him. As he's beaten, the spring prince recalls his past with sadness. His mother said he was incompetent. Because of that woman, everything went wrong. Because of her son, who can't do anything right, everything went wrong. Now we're back to the present. Cheon Yeo Woon watches as the prince cries. He tries to attack him again. However, he's counterattacked, his head brought to the ground. The result of the battle is the complete defeat of the spring prince. All that's left for him is to stay on the ground, crying and bitter about his defeat. Cheon Yeo Woon says you reap what you sow. The prince's allies wonder, is that the same person they said was the weakest? Cheon Yeo Woon asks if they also want to get beaten up. Fearfully, they say no. Museum questions why he didn't finish the job. Cheon Yeo Woon affirms that if the next test wasn't a group one, he would have cracked his skull right there. The prince yells for him to do it. Then, don't be a coward. However, ignoring him, Cheon Yeo Woon leaves. The prince stays behind, only to savor his defeat. As he returns, the protagonist says his lack of combat experience is a problem. Stopping near a river, he asks if the nano machine has more functions he can use. It replies that so far, he has used only 3 out of the 100 functions that exist. Surprised, as he doesn't know the existing functions, he asks the nano to transfer all the knowledge about the functions to his brain. After the shock of knowledge flooding his mind, he feels great, searching his mind for the various functions that exist. The augmented reality function can help. With this, he's able to simulate, in his visual field, a hologram of his opponent. The nano can stimulate in his vision the opponent's movements, so he can simulate realistic combat. The simulations are so good that even the prince's arrogance is in the hologram, and that's good. The protagonist's anger increases, hearing the hologram's word. They engage in combat. Cheon Yeo Woon can't hit the hologram, but the hologram can hit, and the nano machine simulates the impact on him, even the pain. So, after several hours of training, he's exhausted on the ground. Despite feeling a lot of pain, he was able to train even more. No pain can stop him from advancing in his training and changing his destiny. When he finally returns to the dormitory, everyone looks at him suspiciously. Did they know he beat the current dorm leader? Hyobang, the one who tried an ambush from the infirmary and now is bald, was the first to talk to Cheon Yeo Woon, saying his bed is over there. Of all the people in the dormitory, he was the only one to talk to him. So, the protagonist wonders why he changed his attitude. What does he want with this? Hyobang kneels and says he will bet everything on him. Cadet 23 says he wants to follow Prince Cheon Yeo Woon and for him to be his new master. Everyone around wonders if that's a vote of loyalty? Due to what happened before, Cheon Yeo Woon doubts his honesty. However, he insists he regrets his actions. In front of everyone, Hyobang asks him to accept him as a servant to redeem himself. With sincerity, he was betting everything on the 7th prince, as he was abandoned by all the others. After observing for a while, Cheon Yeo Woon says he accepts him like that. This response left him amazed. The bald one was even willing to kiss his feet. All of this happened in front of Prince Museum, who was his master until then. The prince's servant says he's an insect to do this. Bang tries not to show that he's scared, but he's very afraid of them. Watching this happen, the protagonist asks why they're calling his servant an insect, when, in fact, the insect here is you. The boy gets angry. Protagonist asks if he said something. Because of this humiliation, he attacks Cheon Yeo Woon without thinking of anything else. His blows are predictable. He just dodges and hits his neck. He fell unconscious. Compared to his hologram characters, this is nothing. In front of his new servant, the bald one thinks he made the right choice. Cheon Yeo Woon asks if the prince wants to try his luck again. He just ignores and says that nothing changed because he only has one servant. Museum avoided the fight, and the other students notice, and they begin to wonder if maybe that person will bring changes to the academy. A week had passed. On the training field, the instructor shouts that he has taught everything he could to the students. Now, they must be responsible for themselves. The groups that will face each other in the academy's second test will be drawn now. Each key will have 4 groups. The battles will be group against group. The academy director called the leaders to draw. He noticed that some of the leaders had already changed. The groups that will face each other are drawn. Group 1 is everyone's favorite to win. When it was Group 8's turn, he realized that Cheon Yeo Woon was the new group leader. His sister, who just found out now, thinks Museum is an idiot. She warned him several times to be careful. After the afternoon training, the Spring Clan Prince went to the mountains to train alone. However, he is surprised by his sister. Unlike wanting to know why she's here, he ignores her and leaves. The girl insists on talking to him, so Museum asks why she wants it so much. She says that after gracing him with her presence, he can't ignore her. She thought a lot before coming here to talk to him. However, frustrated, the prince doesn't want to know anything else. She loses patience and goes straight to the point. She shows her arm and says she got hurt. The reason for this is that last night, while training, she was ambushed. She doesn't know who did it because they were masked. This really worried her. Museum asserts that this happened because she was careless. Irritated, the sister says that's not how it happened. The girl explains that the academy informed the group leaders in advance against which team they would fight, as they expect the other teams to attack the leaders of rival groups. Without the leader to command a team, the group has no chance of winning. After talking, the girl gets impatient and says she doesn't want to hear that one of the heirs was expelled before taking the second test, so he must be more careful. The girl leaves, and Museum says it's strange. The weakest among the princes warns him. However, behind him, something was hiding in the trees, someone thirsty for blood. Hours had passed. It was already late when Cheon Yeo Woon finished his simulated battles hidden in the forest. After thinking about his progress, he decided to return to the dormitory, but on the way, he noticed something strange. The sound of a fight near where he is. When he's sure of the direction, he goes to check. It didn't take long for him to find a person lying on the ground and Prince Museum in combat with the ninja. The blade already had blood from its victim. In combat, the Spring Clan Prince was struggling to stay alive against the blade attack. He twisted his leg in combat. The situation, which was already critical, was now inevitable. The last attack would be fatal. However, Cheon Yeo Woon goes to him and forces the ninja to defend himself. Cheon Yeo Woon manages to hit his stomach by a hair. Now that he's been discovered and the opponent is strong, the ninja fled. Cheon Yeo Woon asks if the prince didn't die.
I don't feel so good.
After some time, they returned to their dormitory. He even carried the wounded. His new servant asks if his master is okay. He says yes, he's not hurt, just tired. One of the cadets says the prince is bleeding a lot, and that's dangerous. After a while, one of the instructors goes to the dormitory to help. Worried, the instructor says there's a problem. The Spring Prince won't be able to walk normally for some time. That's the worst possible thing. How will the group be able to fight without its leader? The instructor faints Museum and says he will take him to the infirmary. The protagonist, worried, remembers that there is another injured person, but the instructor ignores him. Still, Cheon Yeo Woon carries the other wounded, saying that Cadet 4 is also in trouble. The instructor asserts that Cheon Yeo Woon did very well. He purposely left one behind so that someone would come after him alone. The instructor says that from now on he can take both, and then warns him not to go out tonight, as it's dangerous. The test is tomorrow. He also says that he must learn to fight with what he has. With that, the protagonist understands that his team is understaffed, but that's part of the test. Surely this also happened to the other groups. Thinking about it, he sees ants on the ground and how they fight in groups, attacking the leaders of other colonies. Now, everything makes sense in his mind. In the demonic celestial cult, one should not be bound by rules. Returning to the dormitory, the students are panicked because losing their leader means it's over for them. They'll all be expelled. Cheon Yeo Woon says they must think about electing a new leader and come up with a plan. Before he could say anything else, Yeo Bang suggests that his master be the new leader of the group. He argues argues to everyone that this is the only solution. If he was powerful enough to defeat Prince Museum, he's the best choice. Timidly, everyone raises their hand and agrees that this is the only alternative. So, they all agreed Cheon Yeo Woon, who was despised until today, will lead Group 8. Important decisions were made that night. However, precisely at midnight, the protagonist awakened and, using the nano machines for night vision, he went to the dormitory of Team 7. Upon confirming that everyone was asleep, he stealthily struck the energy points of all the cadets. The last one he struck with excessive force. With everyone unconscious, he now used muscle acupuncture and sealed all their meridians. This way, they wouldn't be able to use Nigang energy. The protagonist whispered to them not to hold resentment. It wasn't personal. Before leaving the team's dormitory, he realized that one person was missing, so perhaps it was from here that the suspicious person who attacked the Spring Clan Prince came. The next day, the new leader of Team 8, Cheon Yeo Woon, went to participate in the drawing for the test. The Guardian, upon noticing this change, was pleased. To him, it meant that the cadets understood the true meaning of this test. After everyone was ready, he told them to show worthy victories and that he was looking forward to seeing them. As they returned to their positions, the protagonist noticed that that person had a familiar look. Those eyes he had seen before. He asked the Nano to analyze his body structure, and after a few seconds, she confirmed that it was 100% compatible with the person from that night. Officially, the team duels for the second academy test would begin. In the first round, Team 1 would face Team 3. The Guardian shouted for them to be ready, and then the troops engaged in combat. Team 1, led by the Dark Clan Prince, gave a flawless performance, using a diagonal formation. With the prince's leadership, they were winning the battle. In the end, the members of Team 3 were completely subdued. The leader of Team 3 surrendered. The Guardian admitted that it's not like he was weak, but against that person, he wouldn't stand a chance. In the second round of the day, Team 4 faced Team 2, and Team 4 emerged victorious. The third clash would be the duel of our protagonist's team. His soldiers were afraid and lacked confidence in the training they had received. The protagonist looked at them and said that if they were nervous, it was normal. He was too, but if they didn't win today, they would be expelled from the academy. Their future depended on it. So they should have anger, not fear, courage, and determination to improve their future. Motivated by these words, his team was now completely focused. How he encouraged the cadets caught the Guardian's attention. Those eyes weren't those of a loser. His opponent would be Team 5, led by the daughter of the Sound Clan. She was frustrated because she wanted to have a match against the Spring Clan Prince. But the idiot lost his position, and now she'll have to face this bastard. The princess ordered everyone to attack. The protagonist then ordered them to wait. She formed an arrowhead formation, and Cheon Yeo organized the formation in layers. The Guardian, observing the combat and the team's decisions, said that this defensive form only makes sense if the front leader is strong. When their princes entered combat and exchanged the first blow, the princess was surprised as the powerless boy defended against her attack. She was extremely powerful, and everyone believed the protagonist was weak, so his defense drew everyone's attention. The protagonist knew he didn't have as much energy as she did, but he smiled in this situation. He managed to defend against all her blows, so, one by one, she wouldn't be able to win. The protagonist ordered them to change position. The formation he ordered, she thought would be foolish for them to make. She said he was a terrible leader, as she expected. The protagonist prepared a line formation, so she would force the destruction of these lines with a spear formation. When they were face to face, he changed the formation to a pincer formation. The girl quickly ordered them to defend against this attack, but before it was completed, the protagonist now ordered them to change to the arrow formation position. She couldn't predict any of the moves he made, so after the movements, they were face to face, but all her troops were cornered. The number of positions he shouted were just tricks. Hearing the positions, she thought she knew what would happen, but in fact, it was a bait. When the order was given to attack, everyone was afraid. The soldiers, in fear, dropped their weapons and gave up. The girls shouted that they were fools for dropping their weapons. The feeling of defeat took over her body, and memories began to flood her mind. She had a feeling that everyone would laugh at her for failing, and it would be against the worst of all. She couldn't accept that, and then flew into a rage. She advanced alone against the leader of Team 8. The protagonist dropped his shield for a sword battle. The girl sustained injuries, as did he, but her skill was surpassed by the brother she hates. Cheon Yeo Woon executed the butterfly strike and defeated his sister. To the absolute surprise of everyone present, even the Guardian, the result was unexpected. The girl only saw that her arm was no longer attached to her body. The protagonist was superior, as she understood the result of the battle and when what happened, the pain reached her, and along with it, a feeling of terror. The screams spread throughout the school. The instructors went to help the defeated while the victorious one observed on the blade. This is his first revenge, and as expected, it is stained with red. Furthermore, he was apprehensive because he executed the movement perfectly as he learned, but his movement wasn't as complete as he expected, so there is a limit even when you already know the moves. Team 8 was declared the winner. The Great Guardian, realizing that this was the butterfly blade technique, was pleased and surprised, wondering how that drunkard managed to teach that to this boy. He thinks that in these last 21 days he has grown in every aspect. He used a high-level technique and managed to cut the princess's arm. It's as if he were a genius sent from the heavens. The Guardian should have insisted on making him his disciple that time. Now the glory of teaching this person will fall upon his drunken rival. From now on, the boy will conquer the heavens. The next fight would be held by Team 7. Its members were not well. The group's leader was angry because the fight he had with the protagonist before hurt him. And somehow, he found out who sabotaged his team and was now looking at him mockingly because he was deceived. In combat, Team 7 wouldn't stand a chance, as all the members had their meridian flow blocked. Defeat was certain. However, the group leader organized the arrowhead formation, and the rival team leader was surprised. The attack was so fierce that it ripped the darkness from his hands and pierced his chest. The scene was frightening, but it motivated his team, which was weak. Even with their energy flows blocked, they could rely on their physical strength and attack. In the end, even though they were without energy, they managed to defeat all the members of the rival team and emerge victorious, an achievement based on strength and hatred. Then the leader of Team 7 tells our protagonist that he will be next. And indeed, this went beyond what he expected, so Cheon Yeo Woon says this guy is annoying. The battle between Teams 7 and 6, Team 7 emerged victorious. All the battles were conducted, so in the director's room, they were analyzing the results. He receives a list of all those who failed in detail. They discuss that because the battles are in groups, if the members of the main families who lost feel offended, they train their representatives and were hindered by the lack of skill of other weak families. Regarding this, the Great Guardian says it's a pity, but they still grew their families well, and nothing can be done. Now, the winners must be taken to the library and receive their medicinal sphere. Everyone was eager to have access to the great knowledge library. The protagonist himself never thought he would set foot in this place, the library that contains books on all martial arts techniques in the cult. The cadets had already accessed the first floor while he was in the infirmary. Today, everyone would have access to the second floor, but the protagonist would have to visit the first and second floors at the same time. He remembers his master telling him not to waste his time in the library and focus only on mastering the butterfly technique. Furthermore, the butterfly technique he is learning is found on the 4th and 5th floors of the library, but he is learning it earlier thanks to his master. Since he wouldn't have time, they wouldn't be able to take advantage of the benefits of the 1st and 2nd floors, but he shouldn't feel sad about it. His master tried to comfort him, but the protagonist was actually confident. No one knows he has an unimaginable secret. It was the first time he saw so many books together, and he could only stay in the library for 2 hours, so he would have to make the most of his time. As he flipped through the pages of the books, he asked the Nano to analyze everything that was written. In 1 hour, he managed to scan a total of 55 books. Walking further into the library, he reached a place where a guard was sleeping next to a monolith. Was this a tomb? The guard responds that this is a tomb left by the ancestral celestial demon founder. This answer caught our protagonist's attention. The man tells him that this was carved in sapphire, which is an almost indestructible stone, but when he looks more closely, Cheon Yeo Woon discovers that this was carved with fingers. The guard comments that people are so focused on the books that they never noticed that this was here and showed no curiosity. He protected this place for over 20 years, and no one ever paid attention to this grave. This includes all the descendants of the celestial family. Looking at the back of this monolith, the protagonist notices something strange. There are blade marks carved into the stone. He asks the Nano to analyze these cuts, and after a complete analysis, she discovers traces of a sword blade intertwined. These marks were made by 2 different weapons, by 2 different people. But why would this be here like this? He uses an augmented reality of the Nano machine and realizes that there is a difference between the marks. It was as if the second person had done it later and tried to hide the original first marks. Anxiously, the protagonist wonders if he could use the Nano to separate the original marks from the marks that were made later. After a complete analysis and using a simulation, he is surprised. Yes, it is possible to separate the sword strikes. These marks are not normal. It is a sword movement with formations unknown to everything the Nano knows. Just by looking, he couldn't tell what kind of movement this was, so he asks Nano to analyze the movements of the marks and replicate them in an augmented reality simulation. It is possible, but first, they have to check the sapphire's resistance to measure the user's strength. At that moment, the guard questions why he isn't going to read books. He's wasting time here. The protagonist then asks if he saw the marks behind as well. He says yes and finds it very sad. Rumors say that the ancestor left the sword technique of his epiphany here. Whoever did this on top to desecrate is a coward. Cheon Yeo wonders if maybe they did this to try to get the ancestor's epiphany. In other words, there is doubt whether this was just vandalism or has a meaning behind it. Finally, the guard lets the student do as he pleases. He won't interfere. Nano informs that the stone's resistance can be measured by putting his hand on the stone. As he begins the analysis, Nano compares the stone's resistance to diamond. Diamond's resistance is 10, and this sapphire is equal to 7. This is extremely resilient, so the protagonist wonders who would be capable of making these marks on the stone using their fingers. Using augmented reality, Nano simulates a dummy in Cheon Yeo Woon's vision. The martial artist prepares and executes the strikes that would leave these marks. Seeing this leaves him astonished. All the marks were left with just one continuous movement of the same technique. The butterfly technique he previously learned from his master, even when mastered, doesn't compare to this. Then, he quickly asks her to transfer the knowledge of these movements to his brain. Now, thinking about it, he doesn't even know who this person is, but he has just received the best gift that could exist. Through this stone, he gained knowledge of incomparable movements. But before leaving, he hadn't thought about the other technique that was on the stone. Curious about this, he asks Nano to simulate the movements of the other person now. When these movements are executed, they are even more devastating. The protagonist was shocked by this information, and he asked Nano to simulate the battle between these two people, technique against technique. After she does this, the holograms engage in combat. The simulation was incredible, and in the end, the first movement that he thought was perfect was nullified in an incomparable way. If he thought that the first person was a genius and the pinnacle of the world, the second person surpassed them. After that, the protagonist went to ask the instructor if there are other tombs like this on other floors of the library. He only worked here his whole life and didn't see the other floors, but he heard that there are others on each floor. On the second floor of the academy library, students were poring over books trying to learn as much as they could. Everyone was focused on reading techniques of new movements and breaths. Among the people, the protagonist noticed that his sword clan brother was also there studying. Of all the heirs, he was the only one interested. None of them came to the library because they thought the content of this place was insignificant. He put that aside and went to get what he was most interested in. The monolith was also on the second floor of the library, and as he thought, there were also engraved marks on the stone behind it. Nano makes the same analysis as she did on the first floor. The techniques recorded in the stone are incredible. The first mark was made with 24 formations of movements from a single technique. The second mark was made with 56 sword movements from a single technique to nullify the first. Nano copied these movements to his armament. The protagonist wanted to test these movements here right away, but there were many people around, so he would have to restrain his eagerness. The other people in the library were annoyed by someone flipping through books quickly and making a lot of noise. By doing this, they were sure that the person wasn't valuing the content, just flipping through the pages very quickly. This bothered everyone around. The protagonist didn't care. With the nano machine, he could analyze all the books in seconds. He caught everyone's attention, including his brothers. Cheon Yeo was curious about what he was doing too. For him, it was also clear that his brother didn't know what he was doing, but it was still curious to see him flipping through the books non-stop. During this time, the protagonist scanned a total of 156 books. After doing this, he asked to analyze all the books that saved the data and weight in his program. Something he realized now is that, no matter how powerful the technique is, for example, the butterfly technique that is among the top 10 martial arts of the cult, it requires experience practicing it thousands of times to achieve mastery. So, he is eager to gain experience in real combat to train. When her shift ends, the protagonist informs that he is leaving. The instructor then informs that someone asked about the time the protagonist would leave the library. So, there is someone waiting for him, but he doesn't pay attention to it. To his surprise, maybe that person just appeared in front of him. He wants to know why someone invaded his dormitory and sabotaged his comrades. With deadly hatred, he wants to confirm if it was him and get an explanation about it. But Cheon Yeo Woon says he is too busy now, and also questions why he left his subordinates alone. It was clear that someone stronger would appear. The boy ignores this provocation and says that now he is there to do the same to him. The protagonist realizes that, unlike a certain someone, he doesn't react to provocations. They were going to fight each other, but before this fight started, someone was behind observing, and when the two were ready to start, his sword clan brother stood between them. This leaves both of them irritated and surprised by this move. His name is Cheon Yeo from the Blade clan. He approaches friendly, saying they were very focused and then didn't notice his presence. He's interrupting this fight because he really needs to talk to his younger brother, so he needs to set aside this skirmish for later. He was being polite, however, this was humiliating, and the boy doesn't give up. He must wait for his brother to be beaten first. His matter is more important. Yu-chan says he tried to be polite and it didn't work out, so now he doesn't know what to do to make him obey. The leader of Team 8 becomes furious and tries to attack the prince of the Sword clan and misses. With just his hands, he is completely nullified, and his life could have been taken with a simple hand movement. In this humiliating way, he questions if the boy is already convinced that he should leave. The protagonist is surprised at how the skills he saw now don't compare to the prince of the Spring clan and the armless princess. They are more advanced. This person didn't even stand a chance against the prince. Yu-chan asks if he has any injuries, perhaps a broken rib, as his movements are limited. The cadet from Team 8 confirms that this prince is on another level from anyone else. He has no chance against him now. He got the message. The prince warns that he can leave now. Humiliated, he simply walks away. When they finally are alone, his brother talks about his true objective. He's there to talk to his brother and not to fight. The protagonist enters combat mode, and Yu-chan stops him and tells him to wait. He's not there to fight. This is the first encounter between the brothers, so he greets politely and says it's a pleasure to meet him. Being called brother is the first time. This is not how they've been acting for years. This kind of attitude leaves him filled with hatred. It's clearly mocking, and the brother acknowledges that him being irritated is quite normal, as he's been rejected by all the clans since then. The protagonist, now furious, asks if he expects him to be nice to him because he was polite. Yu-chan then gets straight to the point. He realized that both of them are on the path of the sword and saw how he used his skill against the sister from the Sound clan. Yu-chan became a passionate fan of his. These affectionate words irritate the protagonist, and he asks him to state his intentions quickly. There's no tension between them, so Yu-chan decides there's no other way and states his goal. He wants him to work for the Blade clan. The protagonist, of course, is surprised to hear this, perhaps irritated. He asks if his brother is serious. His brother responds affirmatively, saying he doesn't know about the other brothers, but he's sure the protagonist shouldn't be his enemy. Our hero questions if what he's asking is for Cheon Yeo Woon to give up being the heir. Yu-chan smiles and says that implies this situation, but anyway, it's not as if he has a chance, so serving the future heir of the cult would be the best option for him. Besides, the older brother has become a passionate fan of the sword techniques of his sixth brother and would provide him with many benefits. His brother didn't expect him to refuse, as it should be obvious he had no chance. However, his sixth brother was saying he would never give up his path, and anyone who got in his way would be defeated. This means that the conflict between them will only be resolved on the battlefield. The older brother is filled with hatred because his brother is insinuating that he has a chance against him, which is obvious to everyone that he doesn't. The protagonist noticed the buildup of energy in his hand. Surely, his brother was planning to attack. When he noticed the micro movements in his fingers, he prepared to defend. This accelerated reaction caught his brother's attention, who began to laugh incessantly. He said that's how it is. There's nothing to be done. They will meet again on the battlefield. Although he tears through the air to demonstrate his ability, it's just physical manifestation. Blade energy is a type of skill he will never be able to achieve. This made him aware of the difference in powers between them. This line divides the power of a genius and a failure. So, now that he has shown the difference, he said he'll leave and says he's looking forward to their meeting on the battlefield. The protagonist thought he was on the same level as his brothers since he defeated the Spring clan, but when he realized that, he was naive. The difference between the other brothers is still like heaven and earth. As he walked back to his dormitory, the brother from the Blade clan was thoughtful. In that second, he intended to cut off his sixth brother's arm and leave him useless. But contrary to all expectations, he managed to anticipate his intention. With that, he is certain if he is his brother, it's not normal. That same night, the protagonist heads to the individual training room of the academy. Here, normal students can train in isolation. It's quite large, so there's not much to do, but at least here, he won't be bothered and will be able to see all the simulations from the Nano machine. She projects the dummies that will perform the movements of the techniques he saw in the library. This simulation of the technique from the second floor, which he hadn't put into practice yet, is even more incredible than on the first floor. So the movements that nullify the first movement are even more monstrous. It's so insane that he shudders. He thinks only a madman could train his whole life to master these movements. He does dozens of simulations and dozens of fights between the dummies. He simulates the butterfly sword technique against the techniques from the monolith. Doing this mental simulation of the movements made his internal energy increase tremendously. Feeling this result, he lost focus on mental training. His Nigong was much more powerful. His internal energy increased by 10 years in cultivation. With this new margin of of energy, he feels that now he is capable of performing this new technique. When he consumes the medicinal ball, which was the prize from the second test, he will be able to increase his internal energy by another 20 years. Since he has little time to train, he decides to turn to train and increase his energy. With this, he has the nano transfer knowledge of these movements to his brain, so he has the knowledge without being able to increase his energy. However, this process will take 10 hours to complete. Now he returns to his dormitory. Things are normal there. The first person he greets is his most faithful servant, the bald one. He notices that his hands hold some sheets of paper. He's studying something he learned in the library. The most common thing to do is to try to write down everything he memorized in the 2 hours they had access to the library. Seeing that he's giving his all, he feels proud. The next day, he returns to the individual training room. He goes into hibernation mode, and after concluding the transformation of his body to adapt to the new techniques he transferred to his brain, one of the side effects is to dirty the floor of the room with last night's dinner. This is quite disgusting and tiresome. However, now he thinks about the benefits. The strength he can put into his hand is much greater than before. His whole body is more resistant, muscular. Look at how many muscles on his belly he gained. The next step is to test how strong he is now. He channels all his strength to strike the wall, focusing on his breathing. He prepares to attack in the room next door. Someone was calmly cultivating, just like him, their energy red, perhaps representing anger. This anger at being humiliated the day before. Before he seeks to compare himself to that prince, the boy needs to make sure to destroy the failed 6th prince. While he was focused, he didn't realize that the wall next to him had turned into an ass. In the next moment, the wall shatters on top of the poor guy who was training there peacefully. The instructors look up in shock and see a curtain of smoke generated by the explosion. The other cadet who was hit by the stones starts to think that there might be an assassin after him, and a silhouette begins to appear in the hole formed by the blow. He concentrates a bit more to realize that actually, this supposed assassin who wanted to kill him is actually Cheon Yeo Woon. He praises the protagonist's mother with various compliments, and faints due to the hit he took. In the training hall corridors, the instructors can be heard scolding the MC heavily. As he carries Cadet 108, the instructor tells the protagonist that he was lucky the cadet didn't die. Otherwise, he would be expelled. He also says he will put this in a report, while the protagonist apologizes. He is also banned from using the training rooms on the 1st and 2nd floors, and will have to use the basement rooms. As he leaves, the instructor comments that to break a stone wall like that means his internal energy has exceeded the limits. Even the MC asks Nano why he became so strong. He didn't think he could break that wall. Nano explains that it's because his muscles have reached their maximum potential. Now he can leave marks even on Sapphire, just with physical strength. The protagonist worriedly asks if his power has reached its limit, and Nano says yes. But that's for now. As he grows more, the limits will also increase proportionally. A little later in the training hall in the basement, he is a bit nervous even though he has decades of knowledge. It will be the first time he trains the absolute technique. He uses the absolute sword technique's first move, but immediately realizes something is wrong, so he uses it again. With many doubts, he wonders why it feels so wrong. Then he uses another sword technique, Destructive Formation 45, and this one seems just right. Then he recalls why the absolute technique didn't work, since in the video he saw it was a harmonious movement, but when he did it, it was awful. So he asks Nano to make a virtual reality comparison of the movements he made with what he saw in the video. Then he watches the movements and analyzes both to see where he went wrong. Even after analyzing, he still doesn't understand why he can't get it right. He sits on the floor, angry for not understanding, until, thinking about the correct flow, he has an idea of what might be wrong. Even to use the butterfly dance formation, the correct energy flow was necessary. Now he feels like an idiot for omitting the flow and trying just the sword movement. After a while thinking about everything, he asks Nano to show the front of the stone on the 1st floor of the library. Nano materializes the stone in front of him in augmented reality. He wonders if there's a clue in that bunch of writing on the stone. According to Nano, it's a poem written by Liu Bang and an axe from the Han Dynasty. Cheon Yeo Woon is surprised. So this poem wasn't written by the ancestral demon? He asks Nano if any word has been changed. She says no word was altered. So he changes his strategy and asks to analyze the stone's surface for clues. And after the analysis, Nano says she found small holes under each character. He confirms with a zoom that there are indeed holes and each character has a different number of holes. He tries to understand what these points mean. 4 points here could mean 4 pressure points. He recalls that the first book he read with Nano's help was about pressure points, and that in the book, each point had a number and a note. He finds it strange because the 4th point is in the chest, and it should start at the dantian, which is in the stomach, but there would be 7 points. Then he has a brilliant idea. The character 4, Big, has 3 points, and if you add 4, there are 7. So he does this with all the other characters, until he reaches the 23rd character. He discovers the hidden flow. The instructors only hear the echo of his laughter as he shouts that he's a genius. The next morning in the academy courtyard, the protagonist is already thinking about going to the basement to try the absolute technique now that he knows the correct flow. He turns around when called by someone. The colleague introduces himself as Yumpa, cadet number 200, and asks if he accepts the challenge of a duel. The MC says there's nothing to gain from this, and since it's not a test, he doesn't want to waste time dueling with strangers. Then the cadet apologizes for being selfish, and says that if the protagonist beats him, he'll give information about the 3rd test. In the forest area, the two are preparing to start the duel. The protagonist asks why he's doing this. The cadet says it's to check the qualifications. The protagonist doesn't quite understand what he meant. The guy says that the technique may not be that impressive, but it is the pride of the lunar energy of the Blade clan. Confident, the protagonist invites him to the fight. Then Yumpa lunges at the MC, who easily dodges the first attack. Yumpa tries again and misses, no matter how much he keeps attacking. To Cheon Yeo Woon, the guy is too slow. Then it's his turn to attack. He hits the guy in the stomach, attacking from below and sending Yumpa into the air. The impact of the blow makes him vomit. Then he falls to the ground unconscious. At that moment, the MC realizes that he used too much force and may have overdone it. On the ground, Yumpa didn't think he would lose so easily after seeing the MC's fight against Cheon Woon Ryo. Maybe Cheon Yeo Woon was hiding his abilities. The guy says this was expected from someone of celestial lineage. He had thought the MC only had advanced martial skills and, as promised, he will give him the information. Cheon Yeo Woon wants to know why the duel, since the opponent wouldn't gain anything from it. The guy says that just as he expected, the MC doesn't trust him. As he said before, he just wanted to check the qualifications, not only the protagonist's but also his own for the 3rd test. Cheon Yeo Woon wants to know what this has to do with the 3rd test. The guy explains that there is a high chance the test will be in groups, but the MC questions that the academy had said there would be no more group tests. It seems that even in a group, this test will value individual strength, aiming to select high-ranking warriors. Only advanced martial artists and at least 30 years of internal energy can become high-ranking warriors. According to Cheon Yeo Woon, only 20% of the cadets from the 2nd test are advanced, so to make up for the lack of energy, they will have to obtain a medicinal pellet. The guy agrees. As soon as the pellets are distributed, many cadets will reach this level, and there's the problem, which is the advanced martial art. On the 2nd floor of the library, there were only intermediate arts books, so many will fail. Thus in the test, they must earn a secret advanced arts book. But it seems that's not all. The guy agrees it would be easy if that were all. About 80% of the cadets would pass. According to his father, the book should have the 7 demon sword techniques, a part of the formations that high-ranking warriors use. Cheon Yeo Woon asks about these demon sword formations, remembering hearing about them. His servant told him they were created by the greatest swordsmen of the time, the sword demons, an art created to combat the 18th and 108th formation of Sorim disciples, but among them, the 7 techniques stood out. Depending on the number of people using the technique together, they become a specific formation. The MC thinks that an advanced artist can defeat the 12th and 36th formation, but only a grandmaster can defeat the 108th formation. Yumpa says his father formed a group of 12 people to learn the 7 techniques. The principle behind the demon sword formation is this: mastering techniques is not enough, since making the formation is quite difficult. The MC asks if this is the reason reason for wanting to test him in a duel, and it was exactly for that reason he couldn't judge just by the technique. He wanted to confirm Cheon Yeo Woon's abilities to see if he would invite him to the test, and the MC asks about the invitation. Then the guy remembers to say that they expect the cadets to lead the third test from learning the arts. He heard that the leaders were decided by the results of the second test. Cheon Yeo Woon inquires if the leaders will choose the members. According to Yumpa, yes, but the cadet can refuse. He supposes the third test is more for the 6 main clans and young masters than for ordinary cadets. In other words, it's another part of the air battle, who will be disqualified if they don't gather men and master formation techniques. Even if cadets can refuse a group, they usually depend on the leaders to pass the test. That's why Yumpa invited him. The guy says this is just the beginning. It's normal to want a skilled leader for the test. Then he says that the reward Cheon Yeo Woon will get is himself, not that the MC had asked for it. He asks if it's possible that he won't be chosen as a leader, but Yumpa is confident that he will be. Realizing that the guy has enough ability to be a leader, something is off, so he decides to use that. Asking why he was chosen if there are other heirs and leaders who passed the second test. Thus, Yumpa reveals that he has already been rejected by the young masters of the Black and Sword clans, which means the MC was his last option. To help, the guy says they both share the path of the sword. Cheon Yeo Woon inquires if that's really the case. The cadet makes it clear that he's not asking to be his subordinate. He just wants help to pass the third test. With all humility, he asks Cheon Yeo Woon to accept him. Thus, the MC smiles at the guy, making him excited to get help. As soon as he kneels to thank him, the MC says he refuses. The guy looks at him shocked, but without any mercy, the protagonist remains firm in rejecting him. A little later, we see Cheon Yeo Woon running through the forest. He asks Nano for the results of the facial analysis. Even if not detecting lies, perfectly activated it when he found something strange. There was a 45% chance that Yumpa was lying when he said the other young masters had already formed groups. The chance increased to 62% when he said he was just asking for help to pass the third test. The MC was keeping a safe distance from him, and remembers the guy smiling when he said they both were on the path of the sword. He must think the MC is an idiot to say he went to the Black clan and the Sword clan, without mentioning the Blade clan. We see Yumpa talking to another guy about the MC's refusal. Cheon Yu-chan starts laughing while Yumpa is still talking about the refusal. He thinks the MC must be interesting, certain that Cheon Yeo Woon would not fall for that lie. Yumpa says their plan failed, but according to his leader, there's nothing to be done. It would have been good if they could have gotten Yumpa to leave the group and disqualify him on the day of the test. If he weren't a rival in the battle, he would want to recruit him. His servant falls to his knees, asking for another chance. He still has other plans he can use, but Cheon Yu-chan says there's no need. It's better he finds a group while he can, or even becomes the leader of one. Yumpa is taken aback upon hearing this. He thought he would stay in the master's group, but the prince says he has other guys to choose from. Before leaving, he calls for Yuma, who is still kneeling, saying he has no use for someone useless like him, a trash, completely shocking the cadet, who leaves wiping away tears after being discarded. Cheon Yu-chan didn't remember the MC being so strong. It left him perplexed, but only time will tell if it's really skill or luck. We see the closed training room. The MC is thinking about getting 11 prodigies. Even if the academy hasn't said anything yet, it could be true. He has a few in mind from Group 8, but there's no guarantee they will follow him. For now, it's better to train and think about it later. He asks if Nano finished scanning the library books and over 100 martial arts books were analyzed. The MC wants Nano to create a hologram of a specific person that was analyzed and then make him fight. As Nano says he can do it, we gradually see the hologram of someone forming. As soon as it takes shape, the hologram of Cheon Mukium calls him a plebeian, telling the MC to come to him to face him. He continues to be irritating while moving in for the attack. As he curves his sword to hit Cheon Yeo Woon, the MC easily dodges him, then prepares his own attack, moving very quickly and hitting the Spring Clan Prince on the neck. The attack makes his neck twist, and Nano informs that the character died due to a neck fracture. Cheon Yeo Woon is surprised, as 4 days ago the attack could only push his opponent. He wonders if he surpassed Cheon Mukium with the realization this was not what he was planning. But then he thinks a little, and asks Nano to create 10 characters, each with a different type of intermediate martial art. Nano uses the same model for the characters who use the final Emperor's Fist, Fallen Sword, among other arts. Looking at them, them, the MC thinks he may have gone too far with 10 characters. Each of them is as annoying as the original, calling him an arrogant plebeian, a cursed bastard. Irritated by their attitude, Cheon Yeo Woon is now eager for combat. Then they all rush at the MC at once, thinking he will be attacked simultaneously. He delivers several very quick strikes to each of them, causing some holograms to disappear. The MC managed to block the first wave of attacks, but he has to retreat before being hit by multiple swords. But he jumps too high and ends up hitting his head on the ceiling of the room, then falls to the ground, and Nano informs that augmented reality will be temporarily suspended. The MC recovers from the blow he took from himself. With the augmented reality, he forgot how small the place is. Cheon Yeo Woon takes another look at the ceiling, specifically at the part he managed to crack with his head. He brings an instructor to analyze what he did, and the guy doesn't like it at all, as the MC keeps causing problems for him. Angry, the guy bans the protagonist from the training room, even with him apologizing. Then the instructor leaves the room and asks Cheon Yeo Woon to follow him. They cross a deserted gate, arriving at a building half the size of the training facility, but with a much thicker door. The instructor explains that the MC should train there from now on, since he will only break the walls again if he uses the training room. The MC asks what place that is. The instructor explains that this room is available to those who reach the specialist level after the 4th test. Cheon Yeo Woon turns around, not understanding. Since he caused problems again, they made this place available early with the Academy's approval. To have broken the walls of the other training room, the MC must have at least the energy of a specialist. These walls are much more resistant, so they shouldn't break. Cheon Yeo Woon thanks the instructor, who tells him not to worry and to focus on training. With the larger room, the MC shouldn't have any problems using augmented reality. Before starting, he reflects on whether to continue facing the 10 characters, but thinks of something, asking Nano if it would be possible to fight against Siabming, which would be possible if he only used the moves of the butterfly dance. Even with just one move, it would be better than facing Cheon Yukiam. Nano uses the model of Professor Siabming himself to use the butterfly dance technique. Although he's just a character, it's much more tense to have him in front of you. The character says that the recruit decided to fight the professor himself. Therefore, Cheon Yeo Woon tells Nano to mute him next time. His professor is in the top 10 martial artists of the demonic clan. Since he's not a match in proficiency, he has to aim for his weaknesses in a preemptive attack. Even so, his attack is easily blocked. Cheon Yeo Woon didn't expect it to be so ineffective. Then he's hit by his professor's drunken fist, which hits his jaw, nearly knocking him unconscious. He's thrown into the air with another attack, and falls to the ground, unable to move, about to be hit again, smiling at his student. He uses the 3rd technique of the butterfly dance, the 7 butterfly dances, throwing Cheon Yeo Woon against the wall. The MC knew he wasn't a match, but didn't think he'd be taken down with the 1st technique, realizing that these are the skills of one of the top martial artists of the demonic cult. So Nano asks if he wants to change the character's martial art, but the MC refuses. Thus, the combat is restarted. This time, Cheon Yeo Woon wants to test the ultimate technique and positions himself for combat. His teacher advances, asking if he really thinks he's ready. The MC analyzes him, ready to use the ultimate technique against him. He manages to dodge the attacks, surprising his master. Then it's Cheon Yeo Woon's turn to use the technique. Even though he dodges the first time, he still manages to hit the drunk teacher's chest. Tired, he realizes that the technique is working. Now it's time to deliver the final blow, almost hitting the middle of the drunk teacher's forehead with the tips of his fingers. But the hologram dodges and hits him in the stomach. He is thrown hard against the wall, and falls in pain, lamenting. Even with the ultimate technique, he cannot defeat him. When his gaze returns to the hologram, he notices something. The teacher had some sword wounds. Even the final moment on the forehead had some effect, but they are all very superficial. He says that in terms of pure technique, he surpassed the hologram, but the experience in combat made all the difference. He has 4 years to complete the Academy's tests, and in these 4 years, he wants to surpass a true master like the teacher. 4 days later, at the Academy's training center, all the cadets, instructors, and the director are gathered. The director asks if they enjoyed their 4 days off, and that now he will explain how the 3rd test will work. In the 3rd test, 12 people will have to perform a formation. Most are surprised by the director's information. The protagonist not so much because he had already received. The director says that the minimum requirement to be part of the 12 who will do the formation is to have advanced martial proficiency, and these books teach the advanced martial arts of the 7 demon swords. With the help of the bullets they will be given, they will have no problems learning. The MC says that up to this point there's no problem. But the director says that the third test will happen in 7 days, and that each group will have to defeat an instructor who is in front of them now. The director says it's simple, but the students are perplexed as to how this can be simple. The instructors are specialists, and some may even have master-level proficiency. The protagonist is calm. Everything Yumpa said is going according to plan. Now they just need to announce the group leaders. The director says that's basically it. Now they just need to gather members and learn the formation, and that they will be dismissed right after he explains the leader selection process. The protagonist is surprised. The information Yumpa had was that they would select the leaders by levels. The director asks if the students see the yellow badge on the instructor's chests, and that the students who manage to take one will be the leaders. The students now think that everyone will fail. The protagonist says that even in the scenario where all the badges are taken, there are 207 people, and even with 17 groups of 12, 3 people would still be expelled. The director says that the instructors will not use their special techniques, only the techniques of the 7 demon swords. Cheon Yeo Woon reflects that even using only the demon sword technique, they have only 7 days to learn the technique, be good enough to counter it, and still defeat the instructor. The director notices that everyone is terrified and decides to scare them a little more. He asks if any student wants to challenge an instructor right now. After a brief silence, the director is disappointed, thinking at least one would accept. But as he is about to dismiss them, someone raises a hand. And to the director's surprise, not just one, but 3 people raise their hands. They are the leader of Group 1 and candidate for Vice Lord of the Black Clan, Cheon Yeo, leader of Group 8, our protagonist, and the leader of Group 12, Baekji, the only leader who defeated a candidate, who was Cheon Jangsum, the candidate from the Poison Clan. 2 men he did not expect volunteered, and that's incredible. Cheon Mukyum just watches the volunteers. Cheon Yeo Woon, looking at the guy who became the leader of Group 12, notices that he seems powerful. The director, pleased to have volunteers, asks the instructors which one of them will fight against the cadets. Before any of them could step forward, the director recalls telling the instructors of groups 1, 8, and 12 not to get too close to their cadets. The first instructor to step forward is the senior instructor, Ho Jin Chang. It wasn't someone the director expected to do this. Ho Jin Chang walks to the front of the others. This makes instructor Lim Pyong think that he doesn't need to volunteer, since his colleague will handle it. From now on, he thinks Cheon Yeo Woon will have to take care of himself because none of them will go easy on him. To the director, they must be trying to deny these cadets the position of leader for the time being. He suggests starting with Group 1, with the first cadet. Before Ho Jin Chang could volunteer, Instructor Yeo soon shouts from the front that he will face the first one. This irritates the senior, as the instructor knew that Ho Jin Chang was interested in that cadet. Yeo soon stepped forward because he thinks Cheon Moo Yun is the most suitable to become Vice Lord and doesn't want him to be humiliated there. With this, the bearded man says he'll take Cadet 18 then, which is Yeo Soon's cadet, and the director agrees with him. The last instructor, Sang Moon Yeo, is in charge of dealing with the MC, who he wanted from the beginning, so we see the first pair to fight approaching. Instructor Yeo Soon and the cadet greet each other before starting. Meanwhile, Cheon Yeo Woon asks Nano to analyze every detail of what happens. Finally, the director orders the combat to begin. The cadet advances at an impressive speed and uses the cloud palm flow technique. The instructor recognizes the technique, which is one of the top 3 palm arts in the main lineage, one of their specialties. It's a pity he can't use his poisonous arts in the duel, so he attacks with the 5th demon sword. The MC, who is just watching, feels that these moves are familiar to him. The cadet is not fazed by the technique, continuing his palm attack, which surprises the instructor. Excited by the fight, Yeo soon realizes that the cadet is a martial specialist in these attacks. Then the cadet notices that the instructor's attacks have changed. Yeo soon uses the 2nd demon sword to attack, knowing he can't treat the young man like an ordinary cadet. The cadet can hardly believe that his highest level technique is being blocked by the instructor's advanced art. The MC is shocked that the moves are the same as those he saw in the Sapphire, the difference being that there are 12, half of the 24 destructive sword techniques, even without being sure because it was the demon sword that left those sword marks. Meanwhile, the duel continues. The cadet is doing his best to match Yeo Soon, concluding that the instructor is also a specialist, but a bit more skilled. As he can block his techniques, he must have much more combat experience. If he doesn't get close soon, he will be at even more of a disadvantage. There's no other way. Yeo Soon notices that the cadet's form has changed. He must be planning to end the fight with his best attack, so the instructor gathers all his energy to block it. The cadet advances to attack, preparing his palm technique, and the instructor is already preparing to block the technique. Suddenly, the cadet changes the direction of the attack. Yeo soon realizes that now his left hand is going to attack. This time, his block doesn't work as well. Even though the moves are the same, when reversed, they are harder to block. As he tries to stop the left hand, the cadet quickly dodges and prepares a new attack. For the first time, Yeo soon can't block it and is hit. The impact of the attack knocks him onto his back, while the cadet looks at him with a serious expression. Seeing this, all the cadets around are impressed, excitedly commenting that the guy defeated an instructor and that this cadet will be the next Vice Lord. The director remembers that only the leader of the Black Clan had been able to use the technique. The boy in front of him is a genius. Yeo soon pulls off the yellow badge from his chest, saying that the cadet managed to become a group leader in the third test, and the cadet thanks him. To the MC, who continues observing, something seems strange in the way they spoke. Can a person only take one badge? Then it's his turn to face an instructor. The best thing is to focus on this fight that will decide his future. He needs to prove himself to everyone. The instructor is impressed with him. Instead of being nervous about facing him, he is confident. Honestly, Sang Moon Yeo thought the young man wouldn't pass the first test, but now is the time to put an end to the MC's luck, as he intends to crush him in front of everyone. Cheon Yeo Woon prepares to start. The instructor recognizes that the MC is going to use the butterfly dance and lets him begin. The young man knows that even with specialist proficiency, he still lacks the internal energy of one. Letting him start is proof that he is being underestimated. Using the 10 stars defensive technique, he wants to finish it in just one attack. This catches Sang Moon Yeo by surprise. As soon as the MC raises his hand to attack, the instructor can hardly believe his speed and can barely dodge Cheon Yeo Woon's attack, being forced to retreat. While the MC's rapid attacks continue, Sang Moon Yeo finally stops just dodging. He notices that the MC has good internal energy, but his external energy is too powerful. Cheon Yeo Woon won't have an easy victory, even though he is being humiliated. Sang Moon Yeo stops the MC's attack, making the protagonist retreat. The instructor knows he still doesn't have the energy of a specialist and asks if he thinks he can escape, preparing to attack with the 4th and 6th demon swords. The MC can see even without Nano's help that this guy's techniques are unstable compared to the techniques from the Sapphire. It's too easy. As Cheon Yeo Woon approaches, the instructor thinks he's a fool for doing so, thinking that now he will easily finish him off. But instead, the one delivering a powerful attack is the MC, leaving everyone watching shocked. Even the director can't believe the MC nullified the demon sword's technique with basic butterfly dance movements. Now Sang Moon Yeo is enraged for being pushed back by a brat's techniques, who decides to knock out the MC with the 10 stars defensive technique, creating an internal injury in him. The director immediately notices his intention to use a lethal technique. The guy is crazy. Cheon Yeo Woon tries to block the instructor's attack, but the energy being forced into him injures his internal organs. He starts calling for Nano to help him, which quickly begins regenerating the injured organs. With regeneration activated, the MC begins attacking the instructor, who wonders why. How can he be doing this, even receiving internal injuries? Panicking, not understanding why the MC hasn't fallen with his attacks, he curses in anger, thinking he just needs to hold on with his energy armor. But the next attack hits his ribs, breaking them, making him vomit from the impact. The guy screams in pain after being hit. Both the other cadets and the instructors are shocked. They can hardly believe what they've just seen. Sang Moon Yeo grabs the MC's shoulder with the little strength he has left, and calls him a monster before falling to the ground. And there he lies unconscious and defeated. The MC is also out of breath. Even though he won, it wasn't an easy fight, standing in front of everyone. After seeing this, Cheon Yeo realizes that Yumpa wasn't exaggerating, and his brother might be a problem. From above, the director reflects that being able to nullify the demon swords makes the MC a martial genius, and that he shouldn't have let the drunkard take care of him. The other instructors inform him that they will need to take Sang Moon Yeo to the infirmary. His ribs and 3 other bones are broken. Only now does the director remember that he didn't tell the instructors that the MC punched fortified walls. If Sang Moon Yeo had fought knowing this, he might not have been so humiliated. Holding the badge, Cheon Yeo Woon thinks that he managed to defeat an instructor. Having lost twice, the instructors are worried that the cadets will think they are weak now. The bearded man looks at his colleagues without saying anything, reflecting that they should be happy the next generation is strong instead of worrying only about themselves. He himself regrets not choosing to fight a cadet as skilled as the MC. The director announces that the final duel will begin. Ho Jin Chang will fight against Baek Ji-ai. The other instructors comment that the senior instructor cannot lose this match, and think that this cadet might also be hiding some skills. Before the match, Baek Ji-ai asks the instructor to grace him with his teachings. Finding him humble, Ho Jin Chang tells him to do his best. Then the two prepare to begin. At first glance, the elder doesn't seem weak. He gives a serious look with a strong presence, making the cadet wonder if this is the same person who was smiling a few moments ago. Not wanting to have regrets, he charges into the fight, leaping towards the elder. The MC only analyzes the techniques, thinking he'll gain an interesting character to fight. Returning to Baek Ji-ai's fight with Ho Jin Chang, the elder seems to see through the attack, and easily dodges the kicks. The cadet notices he did this just by moving his torso, and tries to attack again. The instructor quickly notices an opening in his back foot. Baek Ji-ai knows the instructor will attack that opening, and barely manages to dodge, spinning in the air above the elder, who wasn't expecting this, but won't underestimate the cadet's techniques, who spins to deliver another kick. Even hitting, it doesn't seem the attack was successful. The other cadets say the attack connected. Then we see the cadet's foot has been pierced by Ho Jin Chang's keyblade. The attack throws the young man back. The young man, with his injured foot on the ground, thinks that to have created a keyblade so quickly, the instructor must be a master. By using just a simple sword move, he is much stronger than the other instructors and asks what Baek Ji-ai will do now. The cadet manages to plant his injured foot on the ground, which surprises Ho Jin Chang. Despite the difference in skill, the cadet wants to end this with technique. For the instructor, this shows the young man has a good fighting spirit. The young man charges forward even with the injured foot, to deliver another kick attack. Ho Jin Chang is satisfied that the young man isn't backing down, preparing another key sword. But as the cadet approaches, his attack changes. The instructor realizes he used a feint, preparing the new attack from bottom to top. That doesn't lose strength due to the injury. The elder now knows the young man has the proficiency of a specialist. But something is wrong when he delivers the attack, and the young man realizes it was just an illusion. Then the real Ho Jin Chang appears in front of him. He says it's a shame because the cadet wasn't that bad, and strikes the young man in the chest. The powerful key attack pushes Baek Ji-ai away. He distances himself from the opponent due to the power of the attack, until he hits the ground. Now the other cadets comment that it's not so easy to defeat an instructor. The cadets who fought before were monsters. Baek Ji-ai coughs, knowing that if Ho Jin Chang hadn't held back, the key sword would have hit his heart. From afar, Cheon Yeo Woon thinks the cadet was just unlucky. If the instructor hadn't been a master, the guy would have had a chance. The other instructors must be pleased with the victory. Ho Jin Chang gives attack tips to Baek Ji-ai, saying he's looking forward to his progress. Despite trembling from the injuries, he still thanks the instructor for his teachings, and walks back to the other cadets, still coughing and limping. The MC looks at him among the others. Baek Ji-ai is pale, and his neck is red. He asks Nano to analyze the guy and be ready to show the analysis when the announcement of the third test is over. They hand out wooden swords for the test, only one for each. The director announces that they can become group leaders if they take a badge in 7 days. After that, the cadets are left alone. Cheon Yeo Woon reflects that he should consume the pill first, and check some things afterward. Then he notices several cadets in front of him. One of them looks at him seriously, and in response, he also receives a determined look. Then the bald guy appears, asking what they want with his sovereign. The four stand around Cheon Yeo Woon. He smiles after Hyo Bang calls him sovereign. On the previous night, in the dormitory of Group 8, the cadets are discussing changing things and how it might be dangerous. Hyo Bang admits he is afraid of the 6 main clans, but if it means living in disgrace. Because he comes from a small clan, he is willing to take the risk. With his sovereign, there is hope for people like him. The others reflect on what their companion said. Woong Chun asks if Hyo Bang really trusts the MC, and he confirms it. Then the others look at each other in agreement, pledging loyalty to Cheon Yeo Woon. Back to the present, the MC says the bald guy doesn't need to worry. The young man introduces himself as Cadet 857, Go Wang Ho, and the protagonist introduces himself as well. Being direct, Go Wang Ho says he wants to join the MC's group, leaving him surprised by the proposal. The group members are excited, thinking that the sooner they get the members they need, the more time they'll have to practice. Go Wang Ho mentions that he is from the Black Fist clan and is at the advanced level, so he won't hold the group back. Cadet 920, from the Black Horse clan Hak Young, is at the intermediate level but will be at the advanced level once he consumes the pill. 2 more advanced level cadets eagerly introduce themselves, One Il and Zhao Wu Min. Other interested cadets complain that the elite clan guys will take all the group's spots. Cheon Yeo Woon thanks them for wanting to join the group but explains that he isn't looking for people just to pass the 3rd test, leaving the cadets confused about what he meant by that. He wants people to help him reach the main lineage, companions who will stay with him even in the worst times. Now the cadets whisper that they don't want to get involved in a battle of heirs. Many just want to pass the test. The MC reveals that he doesn't care if the cadet comes from a smaller clan, as long as they want to join him. He wants to change the foundations of the main lineage. Now many of the cadets are divided, thinking they should look for another group's leader. The MC shows them that he wants his companions to become part of the new foundation of the demon cult. Surprised, they discuss what they heard. One by one, they apologize for not being able to join the MC's group, as they just want to pass the test, and practically only his group remains in that place. Hyo Bang feels anxious, thinking they shouldn't have said these things after accepting them. Then he notices that at least 3 cadets remain in front of the group. Go Wang Ho, from the elite Black Fist clan, Zhao Wu Min from an intermediate clan, the Golden Portal, and another from a mid-sized clan, Oh Jiang from the Treasure Sword clan. Go Wang Ho says the MC is different from the other candidates, and the journey he described could lead to their deaths. Being honest, he also wants to give up, which doesn't surprise the MC, as being from an elite clan, the guy could go after a better candidate. Cadet 857 also wants power and glory. After hearing about Cheon Yeo Woon's ambition, he wanted to approach him. Then the cadet kneels, and pledges loyalty to Master Cheon Yeo Woon. He asks to be used as his first sword, one of the future 6 swords of Cheon Yeo Woon's Demon King. Following his example, the other 2 also kneel. Zhao Wu Min from the Golden Portal clan and Oh Jiang from the Treasure Sword clan also pledge loyalty to the MC. After a moment of surprise, Cheon Yeo Woon smiles and thanks the new companions who joined him. The bald guy, feeling jealous, says the newcomer can be the first sword, but he is the first subordinate of the sovereign. At the entrance of the training center, the MC asks the group to absorb the pills and memorize the text of the 7 swords. From the next day, they will train together, and he will analyze their movements and techniques. The group gets excited, thinking they chose the right sovereign who takes good care of them. In the MC's mind, all he has to do is beat them until they learn, just as the drunk teacher did. So they agree to meet later after consuming the pills. Before Cheon Yeo Woon heads to the training room, Cadet 857 calls out to him. He says it might be a silly concern, but the MC should always be accompanied by a subordinate, and is worried about how they were told to take the badges from the instructors. This makes the MC reflect that since the director said they had to take a badge to become a leader, it might not be just the instructors. The cadet continues, saying that since the MC has fewer men compared to Cadet 1, he might be a target. He says he will train in the room next to the sovereign, but Cheon Yeo Woo explains that he can't train there. When he shows where he trains, Cadet 857 is shocked, as only specialists can train there. This makes him think that the sovereign is incredible, and wants to do his best to train in the same place as him. A bit later, in the training room. The MC is testing his techniques. Now that he has become a specialist, he has surpassed 60 years of ki. If he uses the technique on a blade, he can create a ki weapon. He thanks Nano for helping him get there. And Nano, not modest, says he is there because of him. Then Cheon Yeo Woon asks Nano to show the video of Baek Ji-ai's fight. Nano activates augmented reality to show him. The MC asks to pause when Baek Ji-ai is on the ground, and zoom in on the cadet. He can see a little better the moment Baek Ji-ai spits, but he still wants to see a bit more of his face and neck. This time, he can see the marks on his neck better, the very red eyes and the red spots on the neck. He is certain of what it is. The next day, we see a fight between a cadet and an instructor. Instructor Hong Du-wai judges that the young man has surpassed the skills of a cadet. He is a specialist, just like him, and he knows he can't defeat him with the 7 demon swords, even if it doesn't completely nullify his movements. But he gains an advantage in the blind spots of the technique. He wasn't convinced of the guy's skill. To analyze the 7 swords in such a short time, he is a genius. The candidate of the Blade Clan, Cadet 5, Cheon Yeo-chan. Then the instructor says that continuing the duel is useless, and they should stop there. Cheon Yeo-chan knows what that means, that the instructor will hand over his badge. He tells the cadet to gather members for the group and expects great results from him. He finally succeeded. Now he thinks about who will be next. Meanwhile, in the academy's cafeteria, Baek Ji-ai is eating alone. Then someone sits next to him. Cadet 2, from the Sword Clan, Cheon Yeo Woon, says he liked his duel, but Baek Ji-ai slams his hand on the plate furiously and says with a serious look that he is eating and doesn't want to be interrupted. Cadet 2 gets irritated by the rudeness, but directly says that he was impressed by his specialist skills. He mentions that Baek seems to want to be a group leader and asks if he wouldn't like to go further, but the cadet continues eating without responding, irritating Cheon Yeo Woon even more. He controls his anger and tells Baek Ji-ai to think about his offer, that it's a good opportunity. Without saying anything, the cadet thinks that this is the second time. Before him, Cheon Yeo-chan also came to ask Baek Ji-ai to be his right hand. His goal is not to be a leader or go beyond, nor to be under others. What he wants is to become stronger. Then someone else appears to talk to him, and he sends the person away without seeing who it is. But the cadet continues, saying in a low voice that if he doesn't talk to him now, Baek Ji-ai might die. This paralyzes him, and he wants to know why. In front of him is Cheon Yeo Woon with a determined expression. The cadet says the MC is more arrogant than the others and won't be able to recruit people like that. Then the MC realizes there was a misunderstanding, but Baek Ji-ai gets angry, saying that besides being threatened, the guy says it was a misunderstanding. So the MC is direct with him and reveals that the cadet has been poisoned. He doesn't know what Cheon Yeo Woon is talking about, but the MC says he observed during the duel that the cadet was pale and had red spots on his neck. The cadet can't believe it. He was careful with Cheon Jong-sum since joining Group 12. Why tell him this? Even if he was poisoned, it wouldn't be Cheon Yeo Woon's problem. After a moment of silence, he apologizes for misunderstanding. But if he was poisoned, he would have noticed it during key meditation, and the MC asks if he feels well even during meditation. Despite it seeming like food poisoning, the MC knows if it would be noticeable during key meditation. Conveniently, he sees Dr. Baek passing by, and calls the doctor, who is setting his meal. The doctor asks how he is since they haven't seen each other for a while. The doctor comments that he didn't want to eat alone, and the MC asks him to examine Baek Ji-ai, as he thinks he was poisoned. This takes the doctor by surprise. Then we see the academy's infirmary. The doctor asks him to inhale some smoke through his mouth. Baek Ji-ai is confused, and the doctor asks him to just breathe deeply. As the cadet starts doing this, the scent of the incense paralyzes him. Then he starts coughing violently. As he coughs, the red spots on his neck become evident. Then the doctor confirms that he was indeed poisoned through food. Baek Ji-ai doesn't understand how this happened, as he was fine during meditation and eats alone. Then the doctor explains that this poison doesn't flow through the veins. The effects appear when it accumulates in the lungs and stomach. The substance can be used in food or as a powder that can be inhaled while sleeping. In small doses, it's hard to notice the inhalation, and he asks if the cadet shares a dormitory with any user of poison. On the first night at the academy, in the dormitories of Group 12, Baek Ji-ai fought with Cheon Jong-sum from the Poison Clan, and was threatened that he would no longer be safe. At the time, he didn't care about it, saying that at the academy strength was everything, and after winning, he became the leader of Group 12. From the ground, Cheon Jong-sum told him to enjoy the victory while he could, threatening that the poison clan grows stronger over time. Angry at the memory, Baek Ji-ai is sure he was poisoned by that guy. Since he discovered it early, he will be fine if he takes the antidote for 7 days, and the MC asks if he's really okay. Since he was hit in the chest during the duel, the symptoms worsened due to the lung stimulation. If the symptoms had been present all the time, nothing could have saved him. Then the doctor turns to Cheon Yeo Woon, asking how he knows so much about poisons. He reveals that his mother died this way, and that he was also poisoned for a time. At this moment, Baek Ji-ai remembers that he didn't thank the MC and thanks him for saving his life. The MC just says he didn't want anyone to die from a cowardly poison. But there was something more, which even scares the cadet. A bloodlust takes over the MC as he says he was looking for the source of this poison. Breaking the tension, the doctor suggests that Baek Ji-ai sleep in the infirmary that night, because if he goes back to the dormitory, he will be poisoned again. With a scary face, he says that it's better for the cadet not to try to take revenge now, as his foot is still injured. A bit scared, Baek Ji-ai says he doesn't intend to do that. The MC says he will take care of Cheon Jong-sum and that the cadet should rest as the doctor ordered. The doctor asks what the MC is planning, and he says they need to talk. Suddenly, a voice comes into his head, calling him a bastard through sound telepathy. His half-brother says he will find who he's looking for in the forest near the 5th dormitory, and gives a slight smile. Before leaving, the MC says that if this is true, he will make sure that guy has a place near him. Since the other two didn't hear what Cheon Yeo said, they didn't understand what happened, and they think that the MC might be talking about dueling with one of them. What Cheon Yeo wants is for the two to fight each other to the death. Then we see Cheon Jong-sum walking through the forest. As the instructors stay in the 5th dormitory, there's no one there, making it the perfect place to gather poisonous plants. With the pill, he has become an expert, and if he trains for a few more days, he will reach level 5 of destructive poison, where it becomes more lethal. At that level, even without using food poisoning, he will be able to finish off Baek Ji-ai. A voice behind him asks why he's so happy. The guy quickly turns around, asking who's there. He can't see who it is with the faint lantern light, but it doesn't seem to be an instructor. Approaching, the person asks if he felt happy after playing with poison, until we see that it's the MC who was saying this, and the guy asks what a bastard like him is doing there. Then he realizes that Cheon Yeo Woon said something about poison. The MC reveals that he noticed the red spots on Baek Ji-ai's neck, leaving the other surprised. For a moment, Jong-sum says nothing. Then he starts laughing, saying it's true. That's how he found out about Baek Ji-ai's poisoning then. When he was about to say that the MC's mother suffered the same poisoning, he gets a strong punch in the face, which he has no chance of blocking. It's clear that the MC was filled with rage when he attacked, distorting the cadet's face, who is thrown by the punch. The force of the blow is such that he spins and injures himself even more, until his body finally approaches something that can stop him, when he hits a rock wall very hard. At that moment, the guy is already almost unconscious. We heard his howl of pain echo through the forest. He's on the ground, trembling and groaning in pain, trying to understand what just happened. But the MC appears, telling him not to be a wimp, since they've just begun. Cadet 4 thinks the MC is trying to kill him, but that would break the academy rules, so he must be bluffing, and at that moment he realizes he can't move his body. The MC says he did something he shouldn't have and asks if he knows what he did. The guy remains immobile. He's in panic because his body isn't responding. Then the MC gets closer to him, about to throw another punch because Cadet 4 insulted his mother. At that moment, Cheon Young-sum's body moves, and he rises, cursing the protagonist and trying to hit him, saying that he let his guard down. But something surprises him. As soon as he realizes that Cheon Yeo Woon managed to block his punch, his 10-star technique was easily blocked. Then the MC grips the guy's fist tightly, squeezing it to the point where Cheon Young-sum screams in pain, seeing his fist being crushed. Now he concludes that the MC is serious and thinks he needs to kill him. Suddenly, his fist is in front of Cheon Yeo Woon, catching him by surprise as poison poison starts to seep from his palm. The MC covers his face to protect himself from the poison and steps back a bit to avoid being hit. But Cadet 4 doesn't stop, chasing him with his poison palm. As the MC stops moving away from him and the poison, we see that the part of his face that was hit has practically melted. Cadet 4 rejoices that the attack worked. At the 4th level of destruction, he can maintain 7 types of poison within himself, and this was the most dangerous of them. The boss had warned him not to use it on cult members, but being close to death, he wouldn't worry about that. But he's shocked when he sees the MC rising again. Nano tells us that a strong acidic poison was identified on the user's face and hand and activated the defense mode. Cheon Yeo Woon can't believe what he's seeing. Thanks to Nano, the MC's face was practically reconstructed. Cadet 4 can only curse, not understanding how this could happen. Not only did he neutralize the poison, but he also healed himself. This is something that shouldn't be possible even for a martial master. Then he falls on his butt, cursing the protagonist while trembling in fear. It's as if he's facing a real monster. The MC says that obviously, someone from the Poison clan would use such a method. He explains that he thought and doesn't want people like him to continue living. The guy cries in terror and starts crawling on the ground desperately trying to escape. Instead, he gets a kick to the face that throws him backward with force. As he tries to get up, Cheon Yeo Woon starts coughing and realizes that several of his teeth have just fallen out. The MC turns to him once more. He begs on his knees for mercy. He lowers his head, repeatedly pleading for him to be spared this time. Then Cheon Yeo Woon grabs him by the arm and asks if he wants to live, if he wants to be spared. Even having made his mother die in agony, he still has the audacity to ask for this. At this moment, Cheon Yeo Woon thinks there's no hope left. He will never be forgiven. Then he remembers the instructors in the nearby dormitory and tries to mumble something. As he screams for help, he's hit on the back of his neck and realizes his voice has disappeared. The MC didn't like being underestimated by someone trying to call for help from the instructors. He steps on the hand Cadet 4 used to throw poison in his face, making the guy scream even more in pain. Then he lifts the foot he had used to step on the cadet's hand. Cheon Yeo Woon says he won't kill him to avoid being expelled for a trash like this guy, who has a moment of happiness knowing he will be spared. But with a terrifying face, the MC says he will beat him until he begs to go to heaven, and wonders if he will start with Cheon Yeo Woon's bones, who cries upon realizing what awaits him. A little later, we see Cadet 4 all twisted on the ground, thinking about how he ended up like this. It was all because he used a micro-poison on Baekji, remembering when he started learning about micro-poisons 6 years ago at the main house's poison pharmacy. He hears someone asking how long it takes for the poison to take effect, and a woman answers that it will take less than a day to the person buying the poison. He thinks it's excellent that it won't be fully noticed if the person doesn't have internal key knowledge. The cadet's mother, Lady Beck, says that no one without internal key will notice and asks what it will be used for. The buyer repeats the question while laughing, and Cheon Yeo Woon watches her leave the store. Before leaving, the woman glances at the young man, who is left wondering what she meant by that. Less than a month later, news of the death of the Lord's 7th wife, Lady Hwa, spread, and his mother, who hated her, was elated. But it was short-lived, as they discovered that the cause of death was a micro-poison, and his father was furious. They were spared his wrath when a doctor said that other clans also used micro-poisons. Hwa's cook committed suicide, and the culprit was never found. The only thing discovered was that his mother had contact with the lady in the veil, but no one knew who she was. His grandfather, who was the clan leader, lost his position on the council, and his father cut ties with the wives of the 6 main clans. His mother told him that if he admitted to giving the poison to the woman, it would be the same as confessing to the murder. This was supposed to be a secret the two would take to the grave, or he would face his father's wrath. Little Sumi heard his mother, somewhat frightened. His mother passed away a few years later due to guilt, and he wanted to tell everyone that it wasn't her fault, but he couldn't. At that moment, he swore he would become the Lord and avenge his mother against the guilty one and her entire clan. Since that dirty woman was the root of the problem, he would end end her offspring with his own hands. Returning to the present, he apologizes to his mother, because no matter how much he trains, he doesn't think he can defeat this crazy monster. The MC says that sooner or later he would use poison against other cadets, so he will destroy his Dantian. This terrifies Cheon Yeo Woon even more, and he shakes his head in denial. The MC sees he's resisting even after activating the paralysis key pressure points. Maybe he wants to say something. As soon as he releases the silence key pressure point, Cheon Yeo Woon starts to babble something, and the MC asks Nano to analyze what he's saying. According to Nano, the guy said it wasn't the Poison clan that killed his mother. He wants to know more, and the cadet reveals it was one of the ladies from the other 5 clans, the true culprit. So he begs to spare his Dantian, and almost speaks about the injustice his mother suffered. But he stops, or he would reveal that it was his mother who provided the poison to the woman. The MC senses something is wrong and asks Nano to analyze him, while asking if he's sure it was someone from the other clans. Cheon Yeo Woon affirms it by shaking his head, and Nano shows that the analysis reveals less than a 5% chance of him lying, which means he might have taken out his anger on an innocent person. So he asks if Lady Beck really had nothing to do with his mother's death. This time Nano alerts that there was a change in his facial muscles. The probability of lying is 75%, bringing back the MC's rage. The cadet screams that he is not lying, but Cheon Yeo Woon strikes him, telling him to be quiet. The guy screams in pain from the blow, which hit the middle of his chest, and begins to disperse his internal ki. While being hit, he thinks only of his internal ki. At that moment, on the 2nd floor of the Demon Academy's infirmary, the doctor has a bad feeling and thinks about preparing some antidotes. Suddenly, the door bursts open. The MC is carrying Cadet 4 and asks the doctor to do something with him. He shouts, asking what the MC did to make the guy like this, waking up the other patients. Cheon Yeo is shocked. Cheon Yeo Woon really brought the guy who poisoned Baek Ji, just as he said he would. The doctor puts 2 fingers on the cadet's pulse, and is shocked to realize that his Dantian has been destroyed. The internal energy that was in his Dantian was essential to form and maintain the poison he stored without injuring himself. Even though he is not a martial artist, he knows how precious the Dantian is and expected something would happen, but not this. As soon as the doctor makes an incision in the cadet's chest, he coughs up the smell of poison flowing in his blood and is impressed that he is still alive. Maybe he has resistance due to using this type of martial art, but he could die soon. Then the doctor remembers he has something and starts to search, until he comes out with a small golden bag, saying it's his teacher's antidote. He asks Cheon Jong-sum to drink it. Even if it feels like he's dying while drinking, he will survive with this. The MC doesn't want him to die and asks if Nano can enter his body and heal him. But Nano reveals that it's against the system's rules since the registered DNA is the MC's. So, he asks Nano to analyze the poison in the blood splattered on his clothes. Nano asks him to put his fingers in the substance he wants to analyze. Once he does, Nano says there are 7 different types of toxins mixed together causing a new toxic effect, and the MC wants to know which medicines he can combine to create an antidote. Nano creates an augmented reality and starts listing various medicines that can be used. The doctor has just finished his work, saying he prevented the poison from spreading with acupuncture and the antidote. Then a smell reaches him. He realizes it's the scent of medicinal herbs cooking. He approaches Cheon Yeo Woon, asking what he is doing, and the young man says he's making an antidote to resolve the situation. The doctor thinks he's crazy, wondering how he could make an antidote. He looks at the detoxifying herbs the MC used, knowing they can be poisonous if used incorrectly. But the combination he made is perfect, and wonders if the MC studied medicine. The doctor says he made a good remedy but needs to know the poisons beforehand, so the MC describes all of them, leaving the doctor perplexed that he could know this. The MC asks that at least this time, Dr. Beck trust him. A little later, we see Dr. Beck administering some of the new antidote to Cadet 4. From the way he drank, he must want to live, and all they can do now is prevent the poison from spreading with acupuncture. Even though the MC made a good combination of ingredients, the doctor asks him not to be reckless again. To him, it was excessive that Cheon Yeo Woon destroyed the cadet's Dantian. What will he do since the academy director and the Poison clan will not tolerate this? The MC thanks him for his concern and knows he will have to resolve the mess he caused. With that, Dr. Beck falls silent. He thinks the MC is still young and reckless, asking him to reflect on the consequences of his actions. From his experience, those who survive are the most intelligent, not the strongest. Anyway, It's late, and the MC should return to his dormitory. Baek Ji asks if he can also return, and the doctor allows him to go. The MC walks ahead of the other cadets seriously. He wanted to become stronger and achieved this thanks to Nano. Until now, he thought that power was all he needed to surpass others in the sect. That was just his arrogance. Baek Ji casts a silent glance at the MC, until someone asks why he went so far as to destroy Cheon Jangsum's dantian. The MC responds that he couldn't control his anger, and that he thought if he left him alone, he would use his poisons against other cadets. Baek Ji ends up thinking that the MC's decision-making might not be perfect, but he thinks differently from the other candidates. Maybe but before he could say anything, someone shouts for the MC, calling him Sovereign. His group was looking for him, thinking he might have been ambushed. The MC apologizes for making them worry, and the bald man is glad that the Sovereign is okay. Looking at how the MC interacts with the group, Baek Ji thinks the guy really found people who stand by his side. As for him, even in the dormitory, there is no one, so he says he's leaving. The MC asks what he was going to say before, but Baek says it wasn't anything important. Then the followers suggest they go back to the dormitory, and the MC agrees with him. In the dormitory, he tells them about what happened earlier. Cadet 857 points out that they need to get stronger, and that the Poison Clan is one of the central powers of the cult. As they might go after the MC, he should take care of himself and become more powerful. According to him, they need to be prepared now that they are enemies of the Poison Clan. Bubong is more concerned about how the director will deal with what happened. There is no rule saying you can't destroy someone's dantian, but it is the life of a martial artist, and the MC knows he acted without thinking. The next day, Cheon Yeo Woon is on the 3rd floor of the academy, in front of the director's office. The MC thinks his worries have come true. An instructor announces that he has brought him, and the director lets him enter the room. As soon as he enters, the MC introduces himself to the director, who doesn't look at him and continues writing, and a silence settles in the room. Meanwhile, the MC remains in a respectful position, and the director seems to glance in his direction. Still, not a single word is exchanged between them, until the director finally stops writing. He says he had to write a report because of the MC, so it's better he doesn't feel sad for not being greeted. He orders the young man to sit down. The MC obeys and sits without saying anything. The director pulls up a chair, saying they will deal with public matters first, and he will speak as the director. The MC wonders what he meant by speaking as the director. He explains that destroying the dantian is a stupid act. It had never happened before, and if they ignore it, another idiot might repeat it. Seriously calling the name of Cheon Yeo Woon, he orders the cadet to abandon his yellow badge and spend 5 days in solitary confinement in the detention center. Guys, the video is over. I just wanted to ask for your attention real quick. For those who aren't subscribed, please subscribe and leave a like. It helps a lot. 87% of the audience isn't subscribed, so if you want to help, please subscribe.